Chapter 385. Chapter 384. Don't care. Please continue to ask for votes. We have already rushed into the top 5. Come on, brothers. It was just an ordinary quarrel, but because of the aggressiveness of the Land Rover man, it became an uncontrollable situation. He was really courting death. No one had expected that someone would appear out of nowhere and kill the man with the Land Rover in an instant. It was really satisfying. The Land Rover man was too domineering because he was rich. He first quarreled with the security guard, then cursed the beauty behind him, and even wanted to beat the man. No one could stand it. If killing was not against the law, the Land Rover man would have been chopped many times. Unfortunately, in this so-called society ruled by law, justifiable defense and heroism could all be against the law. Who was willing to meddle in other people's business? Everyone was watching the show with the attitude that it was none of their business. At most, they cursed and despised the Land Rover man in their hearts. Annie Wong and Xin did not expect that Qin Sheng would suddenly appear in front of them and protect Xin at the critical moment. Otherwise, the Spring Festival would not be peaceful. However, they still doubted whether what they saw was true. After all, they had not heard from Qin Sheng for almost 2 months, and they seemed to be used to his sudden disappearance. Qin Ran and Qin Sheng got out of the car at the same time and witnessed the whole thing. The Land Rover man was so arrogant that even Qin Ran could not stand it. Moreover, he bullied the mother and daughter of the Lin family, who made Qin Sheng feel guilty. As a hot-blooded young man, how could he bear it? At this moment, the Land Rover man was directly beaten down by Qin Sheng with 2 or 3 punches, which made Qin Ran vent her anger and shocked at the same time. She did not expect her brother to be so good at fighting. She was a little worried at first, but now she was completely relieved. She did not blame Qin Sheng for being too impulsive or making trouble, because people like the Land Rover man deserved to be beaten every time they saw him. As for the possible sequela, Qin Ran did not take it seriously at all. How could the Qin family not have this ability? What was more, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Of course, she could not be delayed by such a trivial thing. She looked at the Land Rover's license plate and took out her mobile phone to make a call. She was not worried about Qin Sheng's safety at all, nor was she worried that Qin Sheng would not be able to control his strength. Her brother was very smart. She was just afraid that he would beat her up too lightly because of some taboo. After beating up the Land Rover man, the 2 friends of the Land Rover man came in. Both of them looked big and strong, but they were full of fat. They could scare ordinary people, but they were unlucky to run into Qin Sheng. Be it in terms of speed or strength, they were no match for Qin Sheng. Therefore, it became a one-sided performance for Qin Sheng, who completely crushed the 2 seemingly tall and strong men. Amidst the exclamations of the onlookers, the 2 strong men grimaced in pain after being beaten by Qin Sheng. In the end, they could only lie on the ground and groan in pain. Qin Sheng ignored the admiration and shock of the onlookers, walked slowly to the man with the Land Rover, squatted down, and said, "Aren't you awesome?" The man with the Land Rover stared at Qin Sheng with a vicious and fearful look. He was so scared that he did not dare to answer, for fear that Qin Sheng would attack him again. It's not a bad thing to be low-key. Don't think that you can be unscrupulous just because you have some stinky money. Moreover, you don't look like a real rich man. At most, you're a relocated family from a village in the city, or an idiot who bought a Land Rover to show off. Qin Sheng lectured the man with a disdainful look. The man resisted the pain on his body and said with difficulty, "Brother, I was wrong, and I admit it." "Really wrong? You really admit it?" "Haha, it has nothing to do with me. What do you want to do? I'll wait for you. I'm afraid that you can't bear the consequences." Qin Sheng squinted and said. At this time, Qin Ran had already made the phone call. The rest of the things would be handled by someone. Whether someone had already called the police and gone through the procedures, or both sides had settled privately, they did not need to worry about it, and there would not be any sequelae. After all, she and Qin Sheng were not in Xian, but Annie Wong and Xin were here. If something really happened, Qin Sheng might feel guilty for the rest of his life. Qin Ran walked slowly to Qin Sheng and said worriedly, "Are you hurt?" "Sister, Your brother is not a pillow with embroidered embroidery, Qin Sheng said disapprovingly, completely ignoring the grievance of the man. Qin Ran stared at Qin Sheng, who was still pretending to be innocent, and did not scold him for being so impulsive in the future. She only hoped that Qin Sheng could live the way he should live and did not have to live the way others wanted him to. Go to see Annie Wang and Xin Xin. I can handle it here. Qin Ran pulled Qin Sheng up and smiled. After all, Annie Wang and Xin Xin were the most important to Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng looked at Qin Ran suspiciously and said, "Can you do it? Don't worry. Even if your sister can't do it, we still have our father. It's such a small thing. Don't worry that the sky and Xin will fall." Qin Ran laughed and did not take it seriously at all. Qin Sheng nodded and turned to walk to Annie Wang and Xin Xin. Looking at Annie Wang and Xin Xin, who were standing not far away, Qin Sheng had mixed feelings and was thinking about how to comfort them. After Qin Sheng left, Qin Ran's face suddenly became cold. She did not have the gentleness and kindness to Qin Sheng at all. She sneered and said, "No matter who you are or what your background is, I don't care because you are not a threat to me at all. Someone should call you in 5 minutes, and they will deal with the next thing. As for who it is, if you can show your face, you will know his identity. If you don't give up and want to fight to the death, I'm sorry, you are not qualified because the young people in Xin who are qualified can be counted with one hand. At that time, you will not be able to enjoy the Spring Festival." The man with the Land Rover had been in Xi'an for so many years. Although he was not a particularly rich man, he was more or less a little bit rich. His father was the head of a village in Xuzhang. His family made a lot of money by demolishing houses. Some of his relatives and friends were also famous, so he was used to being domineering. But it was the first time for him to be looked down upon by a woman like this, as if he was just an ant in front of the woman in front of him. The man with the Land Rover had mixed feelings. He did not believe what the woman in front of him said. He did not believe that he was so unlucky to meet someone he could not afford to offend. Just when he was doubting, the phone rang. The man took out the phone and saw the word "Dad." His heart subconsciously trembled a little. When he answered the phone, before he could say anything, his father on the other side of the phone had already roared angrily. It was the first time for him to see his father so angry in so many years. The man with the Land Rover was instantly disheartened. He knew that he really met a powerful big shot today. He would definitely suffer this loss, and he would also have to apologize. Now, it was not that he could not find trouble with Qin Sheng, but that Qin Sheng would not let him go. If Qin Sheng really did not let him go, not to mention that he might be in trouble, even his dirty father might not be able to escape. Qin Ran smiled faintly. They were quite efficient. She should praise them later. She turned around and walked to Qin Sheng. This matter would not cause any more trouble. She really did not believe that the man with the Land Rover would dare to take risks out of desperation. If so, she would admire him more or less. People were all like this. Of course, when they were rich, they would be full of confidence. They always thought that money could make the devil work the millstone, not to mention that it was not impossible to spend money to buy something. However, the law of the jungle prevailed in this society. When you met someone who was richer and more powerful than you, of course you would obediently admit defeat. After all, even if you had money, you had to be alive to spend it. Over there, Qin Sheng walked to Annie Wang and Xinxin and said guiltily, "Annie Wang, Xinxin, I made you suffer. Are you okay?" Xinxin, who would always dress up prettily when she went out, shook her head hard. However, she was still in a daze and did not know how to greet Qin Sheng for a while. This girl was very dependent on Qin Sheng. However, Qin Sheng's sudden disappearance and reappearance these few times made Xin feel very resentful. Because she was anxious, Annie Wang, who did not put on a coat when she got off the car, had a complicated look in her eyes. "Shenger, are you okay?" Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Auntie, I'm fine. I made you worry for so long. I came back to see you now. I hope you can forgive me." At this time, Xin finally dared to believe that it was Qin Sheng. She said aggrievedly, "Brother, can you not disappear again? Do you know how worried we were?" "No, I will never disappear again. No matter what, I will inform you," Qin Sheng said firmly. At this time, Qin Ran walked over and gently put her hand on Qin Sheng's shoulder. Qin Sheng, if you have anything to say, let's go back and talk. It is so cold outside. Don't let Annie Wong and Xin catch a cold. Moreover, there are so many people watching. Annie Wong looked at Qin Ran thoughtfully. She wanted to say something, but did not know how to say it. It seemed that Qin Sheng came back several times with a beautiful girl, and each one was more beautiful than the other. Miss Han Bing often contacted them, but unfortunately, she was not Qin Sheng's girlfriend. The girl named Lin Su was also good, but it seemed that she disappeared at the same time as Qin Sheng these days. They used to often call to ask about her. Who is this girl today? Is she Qin Sheng's new girlfriend? What about Miss Lin Su? Thinking of Su Qin, Annie Wong could not help but feel a headache. She did not know how to persuade Qin Sheng. Everything about him was good, but he was too playful. Moreover, he was unstoppable with women. As for Xin, she had the same idea as Annie Wong. However, every time a new woman appeared around Qin Sheng, Xin subconsciously held a hostile attitude. It was the same this time. She squinted her eyes and stared at Qin Ran unkindly. Sister, is everything okay? Qin Sheng asked thoughtfully. If there was any trouble, he would find a way to solve it. He could contact Lao Chong and Hao Lei and kill the danger in the cradle. However, compared with that trouble, Zhuang Zhou and Nan Gong of the Qin family were more suitable. Qin Ran said with a faint smile, "It's okay. Don't worry. He doesn't have the guts to do anything else. They will also keep an eye on him. Then I'll be fine." Qin Sheng was relieved. Hearing Qin Sheng call the beautiful girl in front of her sister, Annie Wong asked tentatively, "Shenger, this is?" Qin Sheng took Qin Ran's arm and introduced her seriously. "Annie Wong, Xin, this is my sister, my biological sister." Qin Ran hurriedly greeted them sincerely. "Annie Wong, Xin, nice to meet you. My name is Qin Ran, Qin Sheng's biological sister. Thank you for taking care of Qin Sheng these years." This news shocked Annie Wong and Xin. Qin Sheng's biological sister? Qin Sheng had lived with old Master Qin in the Lin family since he was a child. How could they not know that he had a biological sister? Qin Sheng knew that they must be puzzled. He smiled and said, "Auntie, Xin, if you have any questions, I will explain to you when we get home." Annie Wong and Xin looked at each other. There were too many questions in their hearts, but they could only ask when they got home. Qin Sheng said to them, "You get in the car first. We will follow you." Xin pointed at the Land Rover man and his two friends who had already stood up. "What about them?" Qin Sheng said in a low voice, "Don't worry. We have taken care of it." The Land Rover man and his friends had been staring at Qin Sheng and the others. After hesitating for a long time, they finally walked over uneasily, ready to bow their heads and apologize to Qin Sheng and the others. Qin Ran narrowed her eyes and sneered. "If you want to apologize, we don't need it. As for whether I will take revenge on you or not, someone will talk to you. If you still have eyes, move the car away. Don't block the road. When the police come, I don't need to teach you how to explain." The Land Rover man ignored the blood on his face and almost burst into tears of joy. He smiled comically and said, "Madam, we were wrong. Thank you for forgiving us. I will move the car away now. Don't worry, I will take care of the other things. I will not let you trouble." Qin Ran ignored them. She turned around and walked to the place where they parked the car with Qin Sheng. At this time, Annie Wong had also got in the car. The Land Rover man quickly drove the car into the community and gave way. Chapter 386. Chapter 385, Pay the Price. Keep going. Our goal is to be in the top 3. Work hard. Different people had different destinies. But as long as they lived in this world, it was not a bad thing to be low-key and kind to others. Those who seemed to have suffered losses would eventually be rewarded. Those who were unscrupulous and evil would eventually get their retribution. The owner of the Land Rover was lucky to have met Qin Sheng and Qin Ran today. After all, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran were not the kind of domineering rich playboys. If they had met the kind of people who were more evil than them, they might not have been able to accept the result. What was more, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran were in a special situation today. After all, Tomorrow was New Year's Eve, and they would leave Xi'an. They did not want to spend much time with Annie Wong and Xin. As for how the person Xin Ran called would deal with the aftermath, it was another matter. After the two cars stopped downstairs of the Lin family, Annie Wong and Xin quickly got out of the car. First, they moved the New Year's goods out of the car. Qin Ran and Qin Sheng also moved the gifts prepared by the Qin family from the trunk. In the blink of an eye, the door was full of things. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Auntie, how many things did you buy? We have to buy some gifts when we visit relatives during the new year." Xin just came back to Xin the day before yesterday. "We just had time to buy these things today," Annie Wong explained with a smile. She had been nagging about where Qin Sheng would spend the spring festival this year. He had not come back for several years, which made her very worried. Qin Sheng stared at Xin and said, "Girl, why did you come back so late? Did you have a boyfriend? I have been waiting for you in Hangzhou." Xin pouted and said discontentedly. Her eyes were full of resentment towards Qin Sheng. She first called Qin Sheng and wanted to go to Hangzhou for a few days, but she could not get in touch with him. Then she called Sister Lin, but there was no news. Finally, she called Hao Lei and learned that Qin Sheng was in trouble. But Hao Lei would not tell her. Xin had no choice but to go to Hangzhou to find Han Bing. She waited for Qin Sheng until there was no hope, and then returned to Xi'an. Qin Sheng touched Xin's hair and said, "Girl, I am sorry." At this time, Qin Ran also put away the things. Annie Wong was embarrassed and said, "What are you doing? Why did you bring so many things back? Don't you find it troublesome?" Qin Ran explained with a smile, "Annie Wong, it's no trouble at all. These are our family's gifts to you. Compared to the care you've given him over the years, these are really nothing. If it weren't for so many things before the spring festival, my father would definitely come to visit you. So he can only come to Xi'an after the spring festival." Hearing this, Annie Wong didn't know how to respond. She was a little happy, but also a little disappointed. She could only say that she should go home first. The few of them took some things and finally moved all the big and small bags upstairs. Of course, Qin Sheng, the coolie, took the most. After returning to Lin's house, Qin Sheng felt a sense of familiarity. He lay on the sofa casually and sighed. Home is still the best. The whole house had been cleaned up. The living room and dining room were decorated with festive decorations. The windows were also pasted with the word Fu and paper cuts. There are also a few small lanterns hanging on the balcony. Qin Sheng hadn't been home for the spring festival for several years. This familiar feeling was very comfortable to him, so he said this sentence sincerely. However, Qin Ran, Annie Wong, and Xin had different feelings when they heard this sentence. Annie Wong and Xin, of course, felt gratified. After all, they loved Qin Sheng so much and had been together for more than 20 years. Qin Ran felt a little emotional, because she could see that during the time when Qin Sheng was in Beijing, he had never regarded the Sihiyuan as his home. It seemed that he was just a guest. But after returning to Lin's house, his feelings were natural. However, Qin Ran was not disappointed. After all, Qin Sheng had just returned to Qin's house. Everything had to be done slowly. After putting down the things, Annie Wong enthusiastically took out the spring festival goods, such as fruits and melon seeds and so on. Xin also poured tea for Qin Sheng and Qin Ran. Qin Ran was a guest, so she only needed to say a few polite words. But Qin Sheng was the host, so he dared not to be arrogant and hurried to help Annie Wong. After doing these things, the family finally sat down and could have a good chat. Annie Wong and Xin stared at Qin Sheng and Qin Ran, but they didn't know where to start. Qin Sheng was a little amused and said, "Auntie, ask whatever you want to ask. I know you have a lot of questions, and I will explain to you." Annie Wong asked carefully, "Shenger, are you really brother and sister?" Qin Sheng looked at his sister and said with a smile, "Yes, we are brother and sister." "Annie, you must be very curious. When I was a child, my grandfather and I depended on each other. You have never heard of my family. You always thought I was just an orphan. How come I suddenly have a sister? Not to mention you, when I knew the truth, I didn't expect it at all. But it is the truth, and I have no choice but to believe it. Later, I found out that it was related to some old grievances of my family. I was born in Beijing, and my family is also from Beijing for generations. But when I was a child, something happened to my family, so my grandfather took me to Xi'an to seek refuge. These years, he has never told me about his family, even when he died. It seems that he wants to completely forget the past. However, my family has been looking for me these years, and it was not until they found me a few days ago that we met. I see. No wonder you have a sister. At first, I thought she was your new girlfriend. After Annie Wong heard that, she finally understood and said casually. But after saying that, she realized that something was wrong. That's the case. Sure enough, Qin Ran smiled and said, Annie Wong, how many girlfriends does Qin Sheng have? Annie Wong looked at Qin Sheng and felt a little embarrassed. She didn't know how to answer. She meant to say, don't blame me, I didn't mean it. Xinxin didn't take it seriously and said innocently, Sister, you have to ask him. Qin Ran had never asked Qin Sheng about these things. She only knew that Qin Sheng's current girlfriend was Lin Su. She also knew that Qin Sheng had relationships with several other women. However, she did not know the specifics. Therefore, Qin Ran followed this topic and stared at Qin Sheng with a playful look. Qin Sheng quickly joked, Sister, let's not talk about this now. Annie Wong also helped him out. Sheng, have you been in Beijing these days? Will you settle down in Beijing in the future? Qin Sheng explained, Yes, I've been in Beijing these days, but I don't know what will happen in the future. I haven't decided yet. Xinxin stared at Qin Sheng and said, Then why did you suddenly disappear without telling us? I asked Brother Lei, but he didn't tell me. Qin Sheng sighed and said, Some things happened some time ago. I had to leave Hangzhou, and so did Lao Chong and Hao Lei. If I hadn't found my family, I might still be homeless now. Otherwise, I would have been in big trouble. As I said just now, I thought I was an orphan, but I didn't expect that I had a family. So I had to accept many things slowly. That's why I came back today. Annie Wong pulled Xinxin and said, Xinxin, don't blame your brother. It's not easy for him outside. Many things are not what you think. Qin Sheng was touched by Annie Wong's words. Xinxin also whispered, Mom, I know you love him the most. I just said it casually. Of course, I know it's not easy for him these years. In order not to make Qin Ran feel too embarrassed, Annie Wong looked at Qin Ran and was ready to ask some questions. But she didn't know how to call Qin Ran. Qin Ran, who was smart, immediately smiled and said, Annie Wong, you can call me Ran Ran. From now on, we are a family. I will treat you the same way as Qin Sheng treats you. You are my aunt, and Xinxin is my sister. As Qin Ran said, Qin Sheng owed the Lin family a favor, and he couldn't pay it back in a short time. She would help him pay it back. Sister, except for Sister Lin Su, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Xinxin, who was eccentric, knew how to respond and said with a smile. Qin Sheng deliberately said, It seems that you have said this to a lot of people. What did you say? Xinxin said angrily. Qin Sheng hurriedly looked up at the ceiling and said, Hey, what happened? I don't know. Qin Ran didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she could see how harmonious the relationship between Qin Sheng and Xinxin was. Obviously, at present, even she couldn't compare with them. In the future, she had to make good use of Xinxin. She could learn about Qin Sheng's past from her. Auntie Wong ignored their quarrel and continued to ask, Ran, who else in your family? Qin Ran would tell Annie Wong these things about the Qin family without reservation, because she knew that Annie Wong must be worried about Qin Sheng's situation when he returned to the Qin family. Otherwise, how could she rest assured? Annie Wong, you must know about my grandfather, so I won't say it. My father is doing business in Beijing, and he has some achievements, but he is just a businessman full of money. Qin Ran began to introduce the situation of the Qin family. Qin Chang'an also heard it. He really felt sorry for himself for 3 seconds. This daughter really didn't like him. Qin Ran continued to say, My mother passed away when Qin Sheng and I were young. That's why my grandfather took Qin Sheng away. Hearing this, Annie Wong and Xinxin inevitably felt a little shocked, and also felt sorry for Qin Ran and Qin Sheng. I also have an uncle who used to work in the government department. Later, he became a monk. My aunt went to Canada and hasn't come back these years. As for my mother's family, my grandfather passed away a few years ago. My grandmother is in good health. I have an uncle and a small aunt. My uncle is in the army, and my small aunt got married and moved to Shanghai. She has been taking care of my grandmother, Qin Ran said honestly. Although it was just a simple introduction, others would subconsciously understand that this big family was not simple. It sounds quite complicated. Annie Wong smiled bitterly, but she could understand. After all, they had lived in Beijing for generations, which was not a simple place. Qin Ran was afraid that Annie Wong would think too much, so she continued to say, "In fact, they are all good people. They have been thinking about Qin Sheng these years. So Annie Wong, you can rest assured that Qin Sheng will not be bullied when he goes back. If you are worried, you can go to Beijing later. It's not that I am worried. I just feel that this child has suffered for so many years," Annie Wong said with some distress, but she felt that it would ruin the atmosphere, so she didn't continue. XIN hurriedly changed the topic. "Brother, are you going back to Beijing? I haven't celebrated the Spring Festival with you for several years. You still owe me a lot of money." Speaking of this topic, Qin Sheng didn't know how to say it. He gritted his teeth and said, "Auntie, XN, I may not be able to celebrate the Spring Festival with you this year. We have to go back to Beijing tomorrow morning. But I may come back immediately after the Spring Festival, because it's time to solve Uncle Lin's problem." Originally, Annie Wong and XIN were full of disappointment when they heard that Qin Sheng would go back to Beijing tomorrow and would not celebrate the Spring Festival with the Lin family this year. But they were instantly attracted by Qin Sheng's words. "Brother, what do you mean?" XIN asked subconsciously. Chapter 387. Looking down on, the second update is here. Keep it up. I hope you can keep voting. In fact, after Qin Sheng was brought to Xian by Old Master, his life was quite smooth. He didn't encounter any major setbacks, just some small ones, including the years when he was studying in Shanghai. It seemed that God was taking care of him. However, ever since the Old Master passed away, Qin Sheng's life had completely changed. Whether it was the years when he traveled abroad or the 2 years when he returned to his normal life from Shanghai to Beijing, nothing had gone smoothly. He had been bullied by all kinds of demons and ghosts all the time, so he had been holding back a lot of resentment. Now, Qin Sheng finally had the strength to face these demons and ghosts. Of course, he would not be as patient and sullen as he had been in the past. He would also not consider kowtowing to Yin Chaozong and admitting his mistake like last time. This could be seen from what happened today. He vented his anger. If Qin Ran hadn't called to solve the problem fundamentally, and the other side had admitted their mistakes quickly, Qin Sheng wouldn't have ended like this. As for what happened to Uncle Lin, Qin Chang'an completely understood what Qin Chang'an said at the dinner table that day. If he wasn't absolutely sure, Qin Chang'an wouldn't have told him not to worry about it. Therefore, at this moment, Qin Sheng could say these words to Annie Wong and Xin with full confidence. Because Uncle Lin's case was really too aggrieved. He was colluded with people from both inside and outside, and he was pressured by a big shot in the government. His company went bankrupt and was annexed, and he staggered into prison. If it were not for the help of his old friend, his family would have been ruined. Now, Qin Sheng had to avenge the Lin family. No matter what reason Qin Sheng had for saying this, Annie Wong and Xin would feel relieved after hearing it. However, they didn't know what kind of background Qin Sheng had. Moreover, for them, what happened in the past was the worst. Therefore, they were afraid that Qin Sheng would do something stupid and offend those people again. Auntie Wong hurriedly said, "Sheng, let bygones be bygones. I know you want to save your Uncle Lin, but we can't afford to offend those people. Let's wait for your Uncle Lin to come out." "Brother, my mother is right. Don't cause trouble anymore. I know you're doing this for our own good, but you've been in so much trouble. We don't want anything to happen to you again. We just hope that you're safe and sound," XIN said in a hurry. That was because they had always been worried about Qin Sheng. Every time, they were afraid that Qin Sheng would really die and their world would collapse. The more Annie Wong and Xin worried about him, the more guilty he felt. He forced a smile and said, Auntie, Sheen, don't worry. I'm not the Sheng I used to be. I won't let anyone bully you in the future. Qin Ran also heard Annie Wong and Sheen's words. She knew how much they cared about Qin Sheng. If the Qin family couldn't do anything about it, she didn't know when they would be able to return the favor. Therefore, Qin Ran timely said, Annie Wong, Qin Sheng is right. It's time to solve Uncle Lin's problem. To be honest, few people in Qian are willing to offend those people, but our Qin family really doesn't care about them. What's more, the tycoon behind them has been imprisoned this year. I guess they can't even protect themselves. What's more, the one in charge of the province has a good relationship with our Qin family, and the one in charge of the city has the same bloodline as my uncle's husband. So it's not difficult to solve these problems. Moreover, if they really dare to go to Siju City to make connections, I really don't know who will dare to take this hot potato. After all, no one is willing to offend our Qin family for such a small thing, and they don't have that kind of connections. Qin Ran's words were not on behalf of herself, but on behalf of the Qin family. At the same time, she was also endorsing Qin Sheng. She wanted Annie Wong and Sheen to believe that Qin Sheng believed that the Qin family could help the Lin family vent their anger. Moreover, Qin Ran's words were overbearing, and the information in her words was so powerful. Not to mention Annie Wong and Sheen, who had already realized that the Qin family was not simple. Anyone who heard it would be extremely shocked. What Qin Ran said was right. The one in charge of the province was from Tsinghua University, and the relationship between the Qin family and Tsinghua University was obvious. The one in charge of the city was from Zhejiang. Not to mention the relationship between the Qin family and Tsinghua University. Qin Ran's uncle, who is now very popular in his official career, was from Zhejiang a few years ago. What's more, Qin Sheng's brother in Cheongsam was also from Zhejiang. Qin Sheng continued to say, Auntie, Sheen, my sister is right. The Qin family has the ability to solve Uncle Lin's problem. You don't have to worry about it anymore. I'll come back after the spring festival. Please tell Uncle Lin that I won't have time to see him this time. I hope he won't feel uncomfortable. Annie Wong and Sheen were so excited that they didn't know what to say. They instantly burst into tears of joy. They didn't expect Qin Sheng's family to be so powerful. They thought they had to wait for another 10 years, but now there was finally a turning point. Qin Sheng held Annie Wong's and Sheen's hands and said bitterly, Auntie, Sheen, don't cry during the spring festival. If you cry like this, I'll feel even worse. Annie Wong wiped her tears with a smile and said, I don't cry. I'm just happy. By the way, have you had dinner? Auntie, my sister and I haven't even had lunch yet, Qin Sheng said with a sad face. In front of Annie Wong, Qin Sheng would not lie. He was really hungry at this time. He could bear it, but his sister had to suffer. He had planned to go back to the city to have lunch after going to his grandfather's grave. After that, he would take his sister to see Annie Wong, but he didn't expect that he would be dragged to the village, which wasted too much time. Hearing this, Annie Wong said in a hurry, You haven't had lunch yet. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'm going to cook for you now. Many things are ready-made and will be ready soon. Wait a minute. After that, she ignored Qin Ran's persuasion and ran to the kitchen with Sheen. The mother and daughter were really happy today. There were so many happy things that they couldn't express their inner excitement in words. After Annie Wong and Sheen left, Qin Ran didn't rush to help them. Instead, she said, I can see that they really treat you as a family member. I was worried about how you spent these years in the Lin family, but now I don't worry about it all. Qin Sheng knew what his sister meant. The reason why he insisted on seeing Annie Wong and Sheen was that he wanted to confirm something. So Qin Sheng joked, Sister, are you jealous? You won't believe me if I say I'm not jealous, Qin Ran said coquettishly. In front of Qin Sheng, she was the real Qin Ran, far less arrogant than she was outside. Qin Sheng stood up proudly and said, Well, sister, you'll be the closest person to me in the future, so you won't be jealous anymore. Let's go. I'll show you around my room. There are a lot of childhood memories in it. Hearing this, Qin Ran was satisfied and followed Qin Sheng to the bedroom inside. Annie Wong and Sheen were cooking in the kitchen, while Qin Sheng and his sister were reminiscing about his youth in the bedroom. The room was full of laughter. It didn't take long for the dinner to be ready. When eating, Qin Sheng smiled like a child and said, "Auntie, the food you cook is the best. I'm afraid I'm going to eat too much today." Annie Wang laughed and said, "Then eat more." At this time, Qin Ran said thoughtfully, "Annie Wang, Xin, if you want, you can go back to Beijing with us to celebrate the Spring Festival tomorrow. It'll be more lively." Hearing Qin Ran's sister's words, Xin looked forward to it. In this way, she could finally celebrate the Spring Festival with her brother. But of course, she couldn't make the decision, and it was her mother who made the decision. Annie Wang smiled faintly and refused in a euphemistic way. "Forget it this time. I prepared so many dishes. If you don't eat them, they will all be wasted. If there's a chance in the future, our family of 3 will come to visit you again." Hearing the words family of 3, Qin Sheng understood what she meant. Annie Wang didn't want Uncle Lin to be alone in Xi'an during the Spring Festival. Although they couldn't celebrate the Spring Festival together, as long as they were in Xi'an, their hearts would be together, and this was their home. After dinner, Qin Ran chatted with Annie Wang and Xin in the living room. Although Annie Wang tried to invite Qin Ran to stay at home, she and Xin slept in the master bedroom, so that Xin's room could be vacated for Qin Ran. But for so many years, Qin Ran had never been used to living in other people's homes. Except for her grandmother, uncle, and aunt's home, she always stayed in a hotel when she went out, so she refused politely. But the hotel was not far away. It was the nearest Hyatt Regency, which was only a 10-minute walk. At this time, Qin Sheng called Xin over and asked in a low voice, Xin, do you know that your brother Lei has returned to Xi'an?" Xin was surprised and said, "Haven't you contacted him?" "Not yet. Only you know that I've returned to Xi'an. Others don't know my whereabouts, including your sister Lin Su," Qin Sheng said honestly. Xin said honestly, "Oh, it seems that brother Lei has returned some time ago. I heard that he has been in a bad mood recently and has been drinking outside." Qin Sheng frowned slightly. Apparently, he was unhappy because of what had happened in Hangzhou, or because he had contacted Lao Chong and learned the truth about what had happened in Huangmei town. Qin Sheng said worriedly, "Give me your brother Lei's phone number. I'll call him." Xin immediately took out her phone and searched for Hao Lei's number. At the same time, she asked, "Brother, how are you and Sister Lin? Why don't you contact her? She must be worried about you." Qin Sheng squinted and gritted his teeth as he said, "It's not that we haven't contacted each other. I've told her that I'm fine, but she doesn't know what has happened to me recently. After the Spring Festival, I'll go to Ningbo to meet her openly. This time, I'll see how the Lin family in Ningbo can stop me." Xin did not know the resentment in Qin Sheng's heart and the promise he had made to Lin Su. She just supported Qin Sheng firmly and cheered him on. After getting Hao Lei's phone number, Qin Sheng immediately walked to the balcony. After staying silent for a while, he slowly dialed Hao Lei's number. After a while, the phone was connected. Hearing the noise on the other side, Hao Lei said impatiently, "Who is it?" Qin Sheng replied emotionally, "Brother, I'm back." After that, Hao Lei picked up a cell phone and walked to the balcony. He asked in confusion, "Where are you now?" "Xin, Jindi Furong Shurjia," Qin Sheng said, squinting. He could hear Hao Lei's excited laughter over the phone. Hao Lei said without hesitation, "Wait for me. I'll be right there." "Well, I'll find a place nearby to wait for you. Call me later," Qin Sheng said faintly. After Hao Lei hung up the phone and went back to his room, Zhao Xian couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lei, who called to make you so happy? Is it your girlfriend?" "Take a guess." Hao Lei purposely kept them guessing. Wu Hao understood tacitly. "Qin Sheng." Hao Lei patted Wu Hao's shoulder and smiled. "You're so smart. Qin Sheng is back. He's in Xi'an now. I'll go there now. Do you want to go with me?" Hearing this, Lao Meng said excitedly, "What the F***, Qin Sheng is back. He disappeared for so long. Finally, he's willing to show up. I'll go with you. I have to talk to him. He's like this every time. We're worried that he'll really die one day." Wu Hao and Zhao Xian looked at each other. Because of what happened last year, they had really offended Qin Sheng. If Qin Sheng hadn't cared about their relationship in the past, they might have been disabled now. Therefore, Wu Hao said uneasily, "Is it appropriate for us to go?" Lao Meng looked at Hao Lei. It was not up to him to decide. It had to be Hao Lei's decision. After all, Hao Lei was the closest to Qin Sheng now. He had been following Qin Sheng for the past 2 years. Because of something, Hao Lei cherished the relationship between brothers more and more. He also knew that Wu Hao and Zhao Xian had come to their senses and felt deeply guilty about what had happened in the past. After all, they had been brothers for so many years. There might be some contradictions and conflicts, but as long as they turned back in time, it was all right. Many people might discover that no matter how many years you've been in society, no matter if you're a big shot or an ordinary person, those friends that you can truly trust with will definitely have the same memories as you. Many people's best friends are classmates from middle school and high school. From the beginning to the end, everyone would like to meet such brothers or friends. However, most people would break up after a while. Hao Lei hoped that these former best friends could still be brothers after many years. Moreover, this time, Wu Hao and Zhao Xian had helped him a lot and mentioned what had happened last time many times. Hao Lei thought for a while and finally made up his mind. He knew Qin Sheng's character very well. Qin Sheng would not care about these small things. Although Wu Hao and Zhao Xian had offended him before, they used to be brothers. Hao Lei thought for a while and said, "There is nothing inappropriate about it. Qin Sheng is not that narrow-minded. As long as you really treat him as a friend, he will treat you the same way as before. After all, we're the only ones who have been through this together all these years." Since Hao Lei had said so, Wu Hao and Zhao Xian could not say anything more. They also wanted to apologize to Qin Sheng in person and completely untie the knot in their hearts. Wu Hao looked at Zhao Xian and said, gritting his teeth, "Let's go. No matter what Qin Sheng does, as long as he can forgive us." Zhao Xian also nodded silently. So the 4 men set off from the TV tower to Jindi Furong Shurjia. Of course, they did not bring their wives or girlfriends. After all, some words were suitable for them to be present. In Jindi Furong Shurjia, after hanging up the phone with Hao Lei, Qin Sheng thought of Changbaji again. He did not know whether Lao Chang was in Xian, so he subconsciously called Lao Chang again. However, Lao Chang's phone was turned off, which made Qin Sheng somewhat worried. Finally, Qin Sheng thought of Lin Su. He hesitated for a while and did not call her. He wanted to call her tomorrow night, which might be more appropriate. After the phone call, Qin Sheng returned to the living room and said, "Annie's sister, Xin, I'm going out to lie down. It may be a little late." "It's so late. Where are you going?" Annie Wong asked with some doubts. Qin Sheng smiled and explained, "I just came back today and will leave tomorrow. I have an appointment with Hao Lei. We haven't seen each other for a long time." "Oh, lazy. He returned to Xian some time ago and came to see me. Take care and go home early." Annie Wong was relieved. She was very familiar with Hao Lei and knew that he was one of Qin Sheng's best friends. Every time he returned to Xian, he would come back to see her. Qin Ran smiled and stood up. "How about I go with you? I'll go back to the hotel directly and pick you up tomorrow morning." Qin Sheng thought for a while and nodded. "Okay." At this time, Qin Ran slowly stood up and said to Xin and Annie Wong, "Annie Wong, Xin, I'll leave first. I didn't have a good chat with you this time. I'll stay a few more days when I come to Xian next time." Auntie Wong said politely, "Well, I'll definitely go to Beijing if I have chance. By the way, Ran, sometimes Qin Sheng is a bit impulsive. If he does something wrong, you can talk to him and make him take fewer detours." Qin Ran smiled and said, "Annie Wong, don't worry. I'll definitely control him." They chatted for a while, and then Annie Wong and Xin walked Qin Sheng and Qin Ran out. After leaving Furong Shurjia, Qin Sheng searched for a tea house that was still open nearby. Then he drove to the tea house next to the Hyatt Hotel. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran arrived first. He had already sent the address to Hao Lei. Sitting in the private room, Qin Ran said casually, "I know Hao Lei. He has always been with you." Qin Sheng nodded silently and said, He is my best friend. He has suffered a lot with me." Qin Ran chuckled and said, "Now the bitterness is over." Of course, Qin Sheng understood what his sister meant. No matter how the Qin family would treat Hao Lei, at least he would not let Hao Lei down in the future. As long as he had a high position and wealth, Hao Lei would have a bright future. About 10 minutes later, there was a noise outside the private room. When Qin Sheng was confused, the door of the private room was pushed open by the waiter from outside. Hao Lei came in first with Lao Meng, followed by Wu Hao and Zhao Xian, who did not know how to face Qin Sheng. At this time, Qin Sheng had already stood up. He was not surprised to see Lao Meng. After all, only Lao Meng could hang out with Hao Lei and him. Qin Sheng was about to greet Hao Lei and Lao Meng with a smile, but his face changed slightly when he saw Wu Hao and Zhao Xian following them. Although they used to be friends, Qin Sheng had been hurt by what had happened that time, so he did not treat them as friends anymore. He did not expect that Hao Lei would bring them here. Why? Although Hao Lei was usually dull and did not talk much, he was extraordinarily smart. After all, in the army, one could not become the best soldier only by relying on his physical strength. Qin Ran did not know what had happened here. She thought that those who were brought here by Hao Lei should be Qin Sheng's best friends and Xian. So she just smiled and looked at them. The atmosphere seemed to be a little awkward. Qin Sheng did not know why Hao Lei brought these two people here. After all, they were brothers, and Qin Sheng would not embarrass them too much. He had to force a smile and said, "Come in." After they sat down, Hao Lei could not talk about what had happened in Hangzhou at this time, let alone ask about Qin Sheng's current situation. So he could only find a topic to talk about. He saw the amazing Qin Ran when he came in, but he was used to Qin Sheng being surrounded by different beauties. He just felt a little uncomfortable. When Lin Su appeared in the past, Han Bing and Qin Sheng did not have anything to do with each other, so Hao Lei could understand. But now, Lin Su was Qin Sheng's real girlfriend, and she had done so much for him. Qin Sheng had forgotten Lin Su and hooked up with another beauty. Of course, Hao Lei was not happy, so he squinted and asked, "What? Don't you want to introduce this beauty to us?" Qin Ran felt that the atmosphere was not right, because Qin Sheng did not look that happy. Before she could figure out what was going on, Hao Lei started to pick on her. Of course, Qin Ran knew that he had misunderstood, because the look in Hao Lei's eyes was similar to the look in Xian's eyes when they saw her. So before Qin Sheng opened his mouth, Qin Ran took the initiative to introduce herself. "My name is Qin Ran, Qin Sheng's sister." Hearing this, Hao Lei felt relieved. The others were also curious about Qin Ran's identity. Like Hao Lei, they were more or less envious of Qin Sheng's luck with women. At this time, they also understood and greeted Qin Ran one after another. Chapter 389. Chapter 388. Can you do it? It's the last few hours. I'm counting on you. Top 3, go. Though Lao Meng had called Qin Sheng to help them explain what had happened last time, Qin Sheng was really hurt by Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. No one would treat a former brother like that. So Qin Sheng had not planned to forgive them, nor did he want to have any connection with them. Following that, he also had an opinion about Lao Meng. Today, Qin Sheng brought Qin Ran to meet Hao Lei because he wanted his sister to meet her best brother. Secondly, he wanted to tell Hao Lei something and ask him to meet him in Beijing after the Spring Festival. However, Hao Lei brought Lao Meng with him, which was not a big deal. But Qin Sheng was somewhat dissatisfied with Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. In this way, they would not have a chance to talk about these things. They could only contact each other on the phone. There were 6 people in the box. After greeting them, Qin Ran looked at Qin Sheng's friends. She guessed that there must be some conflicts between them. Otherwise, Qin Sheng would not look so bad. Hao Lei took the initiative to ask, "When did you come back? How have you been recently?" "I just came back at noon today. I don't know if my life is good or bad, but my life has changed. I'll tell you about what happened during this period." Qin Sheng took a sip of tea and said calmly. Qin Ran took the initiative to pour tea for everyone. There were fruits and snacks on the table, but no one seemed to have any appetite. Hao Lei did not know whether Qin Sheng could forgive Wu Hao and Zhao Xian, but he had to try. After all, he could feel their sincerity. Hao Lei took a look at Zhao Xian and Wu Hao. Instead of being embarrassed, it was better to be frank. He said directly, "Lao Qin, I asked Wu Hao and Zhao Xian to come here. I know what happened last time hurt you, but fortunately, nothing serious happened. I have been with them since I came back to Xian. After all, we used to be brothers. Later, they became more or less arrogant or changed because of different experiences. However, we have been together for so many years. We can't just end it because of this little conflict. After all, we have lived for less than 30 years. How many friends can accompany you halfway? That's all. Qin Sheng frowned slightly. It seemed that he did not forgive Hao Lei. Hao Lei continued, a lot of things have happened to us over the past year. A lot of things have happened to Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. They have completely reflected on themselves. Moreover, they're not bad people by nature. I don't know if you can forgive me, but at least give them a chance. After Hao Lei finished speaking, he immediately looked at Wu Hao and Zhao Xian and said, what are you waiting for? Do you really think you are here to drink tea? Originally, Wu Hao and Zhao Xian did not want to say anything since there were outsiders present. However, Qin Sheng's attitude made them understand that if they did not solve this problem today, they might not even have the chance to meet each other in the future. If they cherished this friend and the feelings they once had, then they should swallow their pride, lower their heads, and admit their mistakes. Wu Hao gritted his teeth and said, Qin Sheng, to be honest, you know me. I'm a little conceited and vain, but I'm not a bad person. Otherwise, we can't play together. When we were in school, although we were good friends, I was not convinced because I had a crush on Su Qin and you were in the limelight at school. After the college entrance examination, I wanted to go to Beijing. I heard from others that Uncle Su asked Su Qin to stay in Xian, so I stayed in Xian. Later, I learned that Su Qin followed you to Shanghai. At that moment, my heart was broken. Therefore, during the few years of college, except for the winter and summer vacations, I seldom called you. After graduation, I swore to myself that I, Wu Hao, would make a name for myself. I would do better than Qin Sheng and make Su Qin regret. Therefore, with the protection of my father's generation, I finally made a name for myself. Last year, now the year before last, when you came back to Xian, you called me and said that you wanted a drink. Because I really had something to do at that time, and you had disappeared for 2 years, plus the things that happened before, I did not go there. Later, when you came back to Xian, Hao Lei and Lao Meng told me in advance, so I prepared the dinner that made me want to slap my face. At that time, when I heard Hao Lei talking about what you had done outside, I just wanted to show off in front of you. I wanted to say that you, Qin Sheng, were very powerful at that time. Why are you in such a miserable situation now? Look at how powerful I am. I hope that you could curry favor with those in power in front of me, so that I could completely vent my anger. But you didn't. You behaved very calmly and just treated it as meeting your brothers. The more you behaved like that, the angrier I was. Therefore, I deliberately provoked and humiliated you with words, making you completely furious. Later, I just wanted to save face, to scare you, and make you apologize to me. In fact, I really didn't want to do anything, and I didn't have the guts to do that. Moreover, we used to be brothers. Wu Hao said very sincerely. He was not afraid of making a fool of himself, nor was he afraid that Qin Sheng would not forgive him. Only by saying it out could he feel completely comfortable. After all, he had been holding in for a long time. That's it. Qin Sheng sneered after hearing that. How could he let him forgive him after saying it out? Wu Hao shook his head and said, if it was only this, of course, I might not have reflected on myself so much. These past few years, perhaps because I had walked too fast, my heart had become a little wild. However, many things had happened in this year, no matter if it was my family or myself. They had made me completely understand who my true friends were and how I should live. Only when people are down and out would they understand these things. Only then did I realize that I was almost 30 years old, and the happiest days of my life were during middle school and high school. The only people I could really treat as friends were you guys. Ever since that incident, you guys have completely distanced yourself from me. Only then did I completely wake up to reality. I really wanted to slap myself. After that incident, Lao Ming always scolded me, saying that we used to be brothers, and it was necessary for me to do that. Later, the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. I wanted to call you several times, but I didn't have the courage. Some time ago, Brother Lei came back, and we drank together every day. While I was drunk, I cried to Brother Lay about these things. I called you, but your phone was turned off, and Brother Lay said that he couldn't find you. That day, Brother Lay drank too much and told us that you had a hard time outside these 2 years. You offended a lot of people, and sometimes you even walked around the gate of hell. Now you are still hiding from your enemies, and even dare not come back for the spring festival. The more he said that, the more upset I felt. My brother has it so hard out there. I can't help him at all, and they never say anything. I even King stabbed him in the back. Who do I think I am? I deserve to be like this. No matter how well I do, I won't have any real friends. I've already chased all my real friends away. When Wu Hao finished saying these words, his face was already covered with tears because he had suffered too much during this period. If not for Brother Lei, Lao Ming, and Zhao Xian accompanying him, he might really not have been able to hold on. This time, Qin Sheng was really moved. No matter how cruel he was, he couldn't bear to see his former brothers in such a miserable state. Alas, Qin Sheng let out a deep sigh, feeling a little emotional. Since he had said so much, Wu Hao was not afraid of being laughed at anymore. So he continued, Qin Sheng, to tell you something that you may not know, I secretly went to Shanghai to find Su Qin. I thought you had broken up, and I had some achievements now, hoping that Su Qin would choose me. But what she said to me made me completely give up and let go. She said that in this life, you can't get everything you want just because you have a good family background, good looks, and rich, and you can't really live a happy life. She didn't choose you because of those things, but because of the innocence in your heart, because of your heart of innocence. Only then did I realize that I was worlds apart from you. Qin Sheng was a little surprised. It didn't occur to him that Su Qin would say these words, which made him feel more guilty about her. Wu Hao let out a long sigh and said, Now I already understand that no matter how good I am just a walking dead. But Qin Sheng, you made me understand a lot of things, and I don't want to lose a friend like you. That matter has become a knot in my heart. I have always felt guilty about it. I often get drunk and cry bitterly. I ask myself why I have become such a person. I have changed so much that I don't even recognize myself. Why did I do those things to my own brothers? So today, when I knew you were back, I came here shamelessly. I didn't expect you to forgive me, but I must say these words, or I will feel sad. As for whether we can still be brothers or not, I don't blame you. I only blame myself for being stupid. After saying these words, Wu Hao picked up the wine glass in front of him, treated it as wine, and drank it up. During this period, Lao Ming and Hao Lei had been used to Wu Hao's appearance, which was much better than before. In those days, he was completely like a ghost. After Wu Hao finished his words, Zhao Xian said at this time, Qin Sheng, I don't talk nonsense like Haozi, and I don't have so many grievances with you. When we were in junior high school, I really admired you for the bottom of my heart, and I just wanted to surpass you. Later, our relationship has been good. It's just that Haozi and I were close to each other, and I knew what he did to you and Su Qin, so I kept the distance from you on purpose. Later on, I also stood on Haozi's side and wanted to avenge him. That's why I did that. To be honest, I don't hate you at all, and I still regard you as a friend and brother. When we did that thing, I even tried to persuade Haozi, saying that we might have gone too far. At that time, he was too excited, and I couldn't persuade him. Qin Sheng knew Wu Hao and Zhao Xian better in the past, so he could tell whether their words were true or not. This was Zhao Xian's character. If he was close to someone, he would definitely not cheat on them. He was more sentimental and righteous. Lao Ming and Brother Lane know what happened to us during this period, but you definitely don't know. Both of our families were involved in some troubles, and our businesses were completely ruined. At this time, we really reflected on ourselves and what we did wrong. That thing has always been a pit in our hearts, and we can't get over it. Zhao Xian smiled bitterly and said, Today, we came here shamelessly and said these things shamelessly just to apologize to you, not to ask for your forgiveness. We want you to know that your two brothers are wrong, and they're not that kind of people. After saying these words, Zhao Xian shut up sensibly. He and Wu Hao lowered their heads silently, waiting for Qin Sheng to make a choice and accept it calmly. Qin Sheng had mixed feelings. He didn't know what to say, nor did he know what had happened to make them lose their fighting spirit and become so lifeless. At this time, Haole opened his mouth again and said, Lao Qin, do you know why I chose to forgive them? It's not because of what they said, but because they said something else. What? Qin Sheng frowned and asked. Haole said slowly, that day, I was drunk, and they knew something about us outside. I didn't mean to tell them, but I felt very wrong during this period. You must know why I felt wronged. Wu Hao and Zhao Xian said, Brother Lei, since it's so hard for you and Qin Sheng outside, why don't you come back? Although we can't protect ourselves now, we are more or less capable. If we work hard together, I don't believe that we can't make a name for ourselves. In my opinion, at that time, they could still think of you and me, no matter how bad they are. Haolei's words moved Qin Sheng completely. Qin Sheng fell in a deep thought. Qin Ran didn't interrupt them, but just listened to them. She roughly understood what was going on. She appreciated Wu Hao and Zhao Xian's attitude very much. Not everyone could do this. No one said anything, waiting for Qin Sheng to make a choice. Lao Ming couldn't stand it anymore and shouted, Lao Qin, say something. Whether you agree or not, no one will blame you. It's also a relief for them. Qin Sheng shook his head helplessly. In the end, he smiled gently and said, At this time, we should drink some wine. I remember that I haven't had a good drink with you for a long time. Chapter 390. Chapter 389. Start again. It's finally over. We won the third place smoothly. It was a counterattack all the way. This is the best gift you can give to Old Guan. Thanks to all the friends who have contributed during this period, and thanks to the bosses who turned the tide at the last moment. You didn't drop the ball, and Old Guan didn't let you down. Thank you again. Last time when Lin Su came back, Qin Sheng had met Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. It was also Lao Meng who arranged the meeting. At that time, Qin Sheng also went there. He didn't mind meeting Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. After all, they used to be brothers. Others didn't care about it, but Qin Sheng cared about it. That day, Wu Hao and Zhao Xian also apologized. Qin Sheng smiled and said that he forgave them. They even drank a bottle of beer each. But did Qin Sheng really forgive them? No. Although he said he forgave them, he didn't forgive them in his heart, because their relationship couldn't go back to the past, and also because Wu Hao and Zhao Xian didn't apologize from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Sheng could see this, which was totally different from tonight. After that, Qin Sheng knew some inside story. These two learned from Lao Meng what he had done outside, so they apologized that night for the reason. What happened after that day? Qin Sheng, Wu Hao, and Zhao Xian didn't contact each other anymore. Usually, Qin Sheng was busy. They called him occasionally, but he didn't answer them. He ignored their WeChat messages and so on selectively. Of course, they also knew that it was not over, and Qin Sheng still didn't forgive them. So this time, after Hao Lei came back, they opened their hearts to Hao Lei. They wanted Qin Sheng to forgive them for real instead of perfunctorily. Tonight, they met by chance. Qin Sheng was angry not because he saw Wu Hao and Zhao Xian, but because he only had such a short time. He wanted to have a good talk with Hao Lei, instead of wasting time on these unworthy people. Hao Lei was a little angry. However, he didn't expect that Wu Hao and Zhao Xian would bring up the past again. Compared with the casual attitude last time, they really bowed their heads and apologized sincerely this time. For young people like them who were originally arrogant, bowing their heads to such an extent meant that they really apologized. If it were the old Qin Sheng, he might have a knot in his heart and would not really forgive them. However, during this period of time, Qin Sheng had changed a lot. He was willing to cherish the good times in the past and could not bear to see his brothers in such a state. Moreover, he was a nostalgic person, so he nodded in the end. After Qin Sheng said this, Wu Hao and Zhao Xian felt relieved and sighed with emotion. Wu Hao covered his face and cried. Zhao Xian also had tears in his eyes. They had taken a lot of wrong turns, which was why they had today's retribution. Fortunately, they had woken up in time and started all over again. Qin Sheng said that he would drink some wine, but he was just saying it. Obviously, he would not really drink. After all, he did not have time. He could only wait until he came back next time. They chatted for a while in the tea house. Wu Hao and Zhao Xian asked Qin Sheng sincerely if the thing that Hao Lei said was over. They were more or less worried, and this time they were really worried. Qin Sheng smiled and said that it was over, so they didn't have to worry. Wu Hao and Zhao Xian asked again about Qin Sheng's future plans and whether he wanted to go back to Xian. Although they were down and out now, they still had some ability to help Qin Sheng. After hearing this, Qin Sheng was very touched, but he politely refused, saying that he would think about it after the spring festival. It was getting late. Qin Sheng told them honestly that he would spend the spring festival in Beijing this year and would leave tomorrow morning. They would get together next time when he came back. After hearing this, everyone was very surprised, but they did not say anything. After all, they definitely did not know the reason. Therefore, before 11 o'clock, they left. Qin Sheng said that he would send his sister to the hotel and asked Hao Lei to accompany her. Lao Meng left with Wu Hao and Zhao Xian. This ending was satisfactory. Lao Meng, Wu Hao, and Zhao Xian watched Qin Sheng and Zhao Xian get in the car and leave. Qin Sheng walked in the direction of the Hyatt Hotel. After walking for a while, Hao Lei said, "Lao Qin, you don't blame me, do you?" "To be honest, I did at the beginning, but not now," Qin Sheng said honestly. He had really forgiven Wu Hao and Zhao Xian, but he was not sure whether they could go back to the past completely. Hao Lei smiled faintly and said, "Then I also want to ask you the truth. Have you really forgiven them?" "To be honest, I have forgiven them. After so many years of friendship, I can also see that they are sincere this time, not just casually talking about it last time," Qin Sheng said thoughtfully. Hao Lei nodded silently and said, "That's good. It hasn't been easy for them in the past 6 months. A lot of things have happened to them. Maybe it's because of this that they can see clearly who is a true friend and who is a pack of scoundrels. People will change, but not many people cannot forget their original intentions. I'm very happy to see that they can walk back to the past. I'm also very happy. If we can still be like high school when we are old, I think it is worth it." Qin Sheng squinted and smiled. This was the friendship that everyone wanted, but few people could make it. Hao Lei nodded. He was a person who valued relationships and especially valued friendships. After thinking for a while, Hao Lei changed the topic and said, "By the way, are you really not going to spend the spring festival in Xi'an? Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Qin Sheng thought for a while and said, "I originally wanted to tell you a lot of things tonight, but I did not expect that they would come. I can only briefly explain it to you now. Let me introduce to you again, this beauty behind me is my sister, my biological sister. We share the same parents." Qin Ran did not say much. She just observed these friends of Qin Sheng. She did not care about the past. Now he wanted to know who were real friends and who were fake friends, so she would treat them differently in the future. If they were really good to Qin Sheng, she would not let them down. If they were stabbed in the back, she would not let them down. Hao Lei was originally curious about Qin Ran's identity, but he did not care about it just now. He only heard that this beauty's surname was Qin, so he thought she was Qin Sheng's cousin. But now after hearing Qin Sheng's introduction, Hao Lei was shocked and did not know what to say. Qin Ran smiled politely and greeted Hao Lei again. "Hello, Hao Lei. I have heard Qin Sheng mention you many times." Qin Sheng could understand Hao Lei's reaction. His friends who knew his background would be shocked, so he gave Hao Lei a simple explanation, which was some things that happened during this period. "I see." Hao Lei sighed after hearing it. "I did not expect it to be so complicated. Anyway, you have found your family. I am happy for you." Hao Lei was really happy for Qin Sheng. This man, who could only rely on his grandfather in the past, had no one to rely on after his grandfather passed away. Now he finally found his family. Qin Sheng sighed and said, "So I have to spend the spring festival in Beijing this year. After all, I have to see a lot of relatives. Otherwise, why can't I spend the spring festival with Annie Wang and Xin Xin? I haven't spent the spring festival with them for many years." Hao Lei comforted him. "You will have a chance in the future." At this time, Qin Sheng said seriously, "There's one more thing I want to tell you. After the spring festival, you can directly meet me in Beijing. No later than the 15th of the first lunar month. We have to start again." "Start again?" Hao Lei said in surprise. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "From Shanghai to Hangzhou, we suffered so many losses. Should we just admit it? Qingyang died for me. How can I not avenge him?" Hao Lei already knew about these things. Chang Baji had contacted him later. He went back to Xin some time ago, and they talked about these things in detail. Hao Lei knew that Gu Qingyang died to protect Qin Sheng. Gu Xiaobo betrayed them for fame and wealth. Qin Sheng was still on the run. This was also the reason why Hao Lei was in a bad mood recently. Hao Lei said sincerely, "Lao Qin, I think we should wait until we are strong enough. Otherwise, we will not be their opponents." After all, their enemies were too powerful. Qin Sheng did not know how to introduce them to Hao Lei. He could only say with a smile, "We didn't before, but it may not be the case now. You will know when you arrive in Beijing." Qin Sheng's words were full of confidence, but Hao Lei was confused. After all, he did not know the Qin family's background. Thinking of this, Qin Sheng asked in a hurry, "By the way, did Lao Chang contact you? I can't get through to him." Hao Lei said honestly, "He went back to Xi'an some time ago and then left for the northeast. Now I don't know where he is, and I can't get through to him." Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Forget it. I will contact him later." After arriving at the gate of the Hyatt Hotel, Hao Lei took a taxi and left. Qin Sheng sent his sister to the hotel. On the way to the hotel, he said with a smile, "Hao Lei is really good. He looks honest. I don't know your friends well. I don't know what happened to you in the past, but at least they take you seriously." Qin Sheng said with a smile, "Sister, don't think so much. I have a plan. You should go to bed now. Come over early tomorrow for breakfast." Qin Ran said unhappily, "Do you think I'm too long-winded?" Qin Sheng smiled and flattered his sister. No, I dare not. Everyone knows that my sister is the best to me." Qin Ran snorted and said, "That's more like it. Okay, go back early. Don't let Annie Wong wait for too long. I will go upstairs now. See you tomorrow." Qin Sheng nodded and said good night with a smile. Then he left the hotel and took a taxi back to Jindi, Furong Shurjia. When he returned to the Lin family, Annie Wong and Xin were still awake. They were worried about him, so they waited for him to come back. Qin Sheng chatted with them for a while and answered their questions. It was not until 12 o'clock that he went to bed. Lying on this familiar old bed, Qin Sheng felt very relaxed. Today was finally different from the past. Perhaps his luck had taken a turn for the better. During this period of time, there was nothing that bothered him. Instead, they were all happy things. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. He hoped that everything would go well next year. While thinking about it, Qin Sheng fell asleep unknowingly. In the morning, when Qin Sheng woke up, it was already 8 o'clock. He had a good sleep. When he came out of the shower, his sister, Qin Ran, had come from the hotel. Seeing him, she joked, "You are really a lazy pig. I have been waiting for you for half an hour. Hurry up and eat breakfast. We don't have much time." Qin Sheng did not dare to talk nonsense. After saying goodbye to Annie Wong and Xin, he quickly sat down and ate breakfast. After finishing his breakfast, he told Annie Wong and Xin something and was ready to go to the airport with his sister. Outside the door, the driver had been waiting for a long time. After waving goodbye to Annie Wong and Xin, Qin Sheng got in the car reluctantly and left. Every time he was in a hurry, he had no time to accompany Annie Wong. Qin Sheng felt a little guilty, but he would make it up to her in the future. At 12 o'clock sharp, the plane finally landed at the Capital International Airport. Chapter 391. This is the Spring Festival. Thank you again. By the way, I will adjust the update schedule tomorrow. There will still be 2 chapters a day. Please pay attention to the specific schedule. On the last day of the year, most people had returned to their hometown. Every family was full of laughter. After all, there were many customs on New Year's Eve, such as visiting their ancestors' graves and inviting them home for the Spring Festival. Therefore, the capital airport, which was usually bustling with people, was a bit cold today. But there were still many passengers who wanted to go back to their hometown to reunite with their families before the New Year's Eve dinner. The atmosphere in the airport was also very strong, but the stronger the atmosphere, the more bitter it was for them. If it was not for the sake of living, no one would want to go back home earlier. They had to rush to the last moment. Gongsun came to pick up Qin Sheng, and Qin ran in person. As the housekeeper of the Qin family, he had arranged everything for the Qin family. Compared to yesterday, when they came to the airport, there were basically no cars on the way back to the airport today. This huge city had once again become an empty city, but in a few days, it would once again be lively, year after year. It was unknown when this cycle would stop. In the car, Qin Ran and Uncle Gongsun were chatting about the preparations at home. Qin Sheng looked at the decorations on both sides of the street and the skyscrapers through the car window. He could not help but think of the interesting things that happened when he was young. Compared to the city, the atmosphere in the countryside was stronger, but it was not as strong as it was when he was young. But Qin Sheng never liked the spring festival when he was young because he felt lonely every time. Every family was reuniting, but he could only stay with his grandfather in the old house. At that time, Qin Sheng was a bit stubborn. Although he only had his grandfather, he insisted on cleaning the old house, pasting couplets and the word fu, hanging the China festival, and all kinds of decorations. It must be full of the atmosphere like other people's houses. Luckily, the Lin family was there. The Lin family prepared all the New Year's goods in the old house. The Lin family asked Qin Sheng and Old Master Qin to go to the Lin family for the spring festival many times, but Old Master Qin never agreed. It seemed that in his world, there was no such thing as the spring festival. Of course, Qin Sheng would not go either if Old Master Qin did not go. He could only stay with his grandfather in the old house until the second day of the new year. Thinking of these past events, Qin Sheng could not help but smile bitterly. The older he was, the more he knew how difficult it was for his grandfather. He had never blamed his grandfather for taking him away from the Qin family, because he had learned a lot of things from his grandfather, which could not be learned in a lifetime outside. He had been thinking about how many storms an old man had to go through in his life to be able to be so calm when he was old. Nothing could cause any ripples in his heart. Day after day, year after year, it was as if he was just quietly waiting for death. Up until now, Qin Sheng had never met such a legendary figure like his grandfather. However, he had yet to unveil the mysterious veil of his grandfather's life. However, now that he had returned to the Qin family, he knew that he was not far from that day. The truth of the past would gradually surface. Even if he did not take the initiative to find the answer, some things would come to him on their own. Returning to the Qin family was a new life for Qin Sheng. His life would be completely turned upside down. However, everything had its pros and cons. Returning to the Qin family would also put him in a greater crisis. This was also the fundamental reason why Qin Chang'an dared not acknowledge Qin Sheng at the beginning. He was afraid that Qin Sheng could not bear all of this. After all, Old Master had given Qin Sheng more than 20 years of happiness and comfort. He could not let him destroy it. When they arrived at the alley of the Sihiyuan, they saw that every household had pasted couplets and the word fu on their doors. Only the gate of the Qin family was still bare. Qin Ran asked with a smile, "Uncle Gongsun, why haven't we pasted couplets yet? Didn't we do it at this time in the past?" Gongsun explained with a smile, "Master said that he would let you do it this year, so he was waiting for you to come back." "Poor people are fastidious," Qin Ran said disapprovingly, but she also knew what it meant. If one really counted, this year should be the official new year in the Sihiyuan. In the past, it was too quiet. After all, Qin Sheng was back this year. After entering the Sihiyuan, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran had lunch and rested for a while. After that, they began to get busy. Gongsun had prepared everything. However, compared with the usual days, many people left the Sihiyuan on New Year's Eve. This was Gongsun's arrangement. Every year, during the Spring Festival, they would be divided into two shifts. After the 7th day of the Lunar New Year, the bodyguards and servants who stayed in the Sihiyuan would go home to celebrate the Spring Festival. They would not come back until the 15th day of the Lunar New Year. Qin Chang'an was not there. Although he was in a high position, he was busier than anyone else during the Spring Festival. He did not come back until the afternoon of New Year's Eve. He had to visit a lot of people, but a lot of people also had to visit him. Therefore, he had to divide the time. However, this year, Qin Sheng could relax a little, because Qin Sheng could do a lot of things for him. Sister, do you think it's okay? Outside the Sihiyuan, Qin Sheng stepped on the ladder and pasted the Spring Festival couplets. Qin Ran was watching him from below. Two bodyguards were stabilizing the ladder. Gongsun was beside him, telling him to be careful. What Qin Sheng did not expect was that this couplet was actually written by Qin Chang'an himself. After asking Gongsun, he found out that Qin Chang'an personally wrote the couplets and the character Fu every year. God knew how many tycoons wanted to ask Qin Chang'an to write this couplet. Qin Sheng understood after thinking about it. No matter what, the Qin family was a family of scholars. Needless to say, his grandfather's calligraphy was at the peak. He had been trained by his grandfather since he was a child. He was thrown into the Bailey Museum to copy and so on. Now, he also had some achievements, not to mention Qin Chang'an. Therefore, it was not strange. Just now, Qin Sheng carefully studied Qin Chang'an's calligraphy. Compared with the old master in him, Qin Chang'an's calligraphy was more or less mature. However, it was definitely elegant. Qin Sheng sneered at Qin Chang'an in his heart. If I had known this, I would have written it myself. It would have definitely amazed everyone. That was true. If Qin Sheng wrote it in semi-cursive script, if someone who knew about calligraphy passed by, he would definitely be shocked. It's crooked. Move it to the right, a little higher on the left. Yes, it's done. Qin Ran, who was standing below, raised her head and directed Qin Sheng. Her face was full of happiness. Within a few minutes, the two of them had pasted the couplet and the character Fu outside the gate. They cooperated tacitly. Qin Sheng stood at the door and said with interest, "Not bad. It's just that the calligraphy is not good enough. If it were me, it would be perfect." Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Qin Chang'an's calligraphy had been praised by several tycoons. Qin Sheng was definitely showing off his slight skill in front of an expert. You're bragging. You're getting more and more bragging. Do you know who collected your father's calligraphy? Qin Ran covered her mouth and smiled. She liked Qin Sheng's serious look of talking nonsense more and more. Qin Sheng said disapprovingly, "Sister, you don't believe me. You definitely haven't seen Grandpa's calligraphy, right? That's awesome. I dare not say that I can challenge Grandpa, but his calligraphy is just so. When there's a chance, I'll write a piece of calligraphy for you as a gift. If you don't believe me, you can find a master to appraise it or directly take it to Giada or Poly Auction House. They will definitely be scared half to death by you." "Oh, where did you learn to brag? We don't have someone like you in our family." Qin Sheng's bragging became more and more exaggerated. Qin Ran did not believe him and said helplessly, "Never mind if you don't believe me. Maybe I'm too low-key. You can't wake up a person who is pretending to be asleep. You just want to pour a basin of cold water on him." So Qin Sheng did not bother to argue. He shrugged and said, "Forget it if you don't believe me. Maybe I'm too low-key. Believe me. You're low-key, okay? Then don't be so long-winded. There's still a lot of things to be pasted inside. Hurry up. We still have to go to Sanli River after we finish our work." Qin Ran did not want to continue arguing with Qin Sheng. She pulled him inside. "Sister, listen to me." Qin Sheng wanted to continue to reason with his sister, but Qin Ran had already ignored him. Qin Sheng could only sigh. It's lonely to be a master. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran pasted couplets and the word Fu on all the doors and windows of the Sihiyuan. They also hung a lot of China knots. Together with the lanterns, the entire Sihiyuan was extraordinarily beautiful. It was already 4 o'clock when they finished the work. Qin Ran took Qin Sheng to the old house in Sanli River. Fortunately, it was not far away. They arrived in less than 20 minutes. The old house had been cleaned by the ant. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran pasted the couplets and hung the lanterns in a hurry. It took them half an hour to finish the work. Last but not least, it was to hold a memorial ceremony for their mother. They put up the offerings brought from the Sihiyuan. Qin Ran, as a sister, offered incense. After kneeling down and kowtowing, Qin Ran faced their mother's portrait and said happily, "Mom, it's the Spring Festival." Qin Sheng followed his sister and said, "Mom, it's the Spring Festival." It had been more than 20 years. The whole family could finally reunite for the spring festival. It was already 5:30 p.m. when they returned from the old house to the Sihiyuan. The atmosphere of the spring festival was getting stronger and stronger. The radio was talking about the local customs of the spring festival. Qin Sheng looked at his sister, who was driving seriously, and felt inexplicably happy. When they came back, Qin Chang'an was already there. He was busy in the living room. Qin Ran teased him on purpose. "Dad, I thought you were not coming back. You were going to take your brother to Shanghai to live with Grandma." Qin Chang'an did not know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that his daughter was teasing him again. He had no choice but to reply, "How could I bear to leave you?" The tea table in the living room was filled with all kinds of melon seeds, fruits, candies, and snacks. There was no empty space on the table. Qin Ran was confused. "Dad, why did you put so many things on the table?" Qin Chang'an did not answer. Of course, he would not tell her the reason. He just pushed Qin Ran and said, "Don't make trouble here. You and your brother bought new clothes, right? Go take a shower and change. The New Year's Eve dinner is almost ready." Qin Ran curled her lips and said, "How old are you? You still need to wear new clothes." However, she seemed to have forgotten that Qin Sheng had said the same thing some time ago. She did not care about Qin Sheng at all and took him to buy a lot of things. However, although she said that, she still pulled Qin Sheng upstairs. This spring festival was destined to be different from the past. After all, for so many years, no spring festival could make her so happy. After taking a shower and changing into new clothes, Qin Ran saw Qin Sheng, who looked like a new person. She could not help but say, "Tisk tisk, you are indeed my brother. You are so handsome. I'm almost fascinated by you." Qin Sheng also looked at his sister and fronted him up and down. Her temperament and appearance were really much better than those big stars. He smiled and said, "Well, with such a beautiful sister, of course, I will have such a handsome brother. Otherwise, I will embarrass her." Qin Ran was amused by Qin Sheng and could not stop laughing. She took Qin Sheng's arm and went downstairs. They were really a golden couple. As expected, when they went downstairs, Qin Chang'an, who had just taken a few bottles of red wine from the wine cellar, was directly stunned. He almost said, "You are indeed my son and daughter." Qin Ran walked to Qin Chang'an, took her father's arm, and asked, "Dad, why is the New Year's Eve dinner so sumptuous this year?" Qin Chang'an smiled faintly and gave the answer. "The guests should be here. You go and welcome them for me." "There are guests this year? Who?" Qin Ran could not help but ask curiously. In the past, there had never been guests on New Year's Eve. Qin Chang'an deliberately kept her in suspense. "You will know when you go out." When Qin Ran took Qin Sheng out of the Sihiyuan, they waited at the gate for less than 2 minutes. 2 cars stopped at the gate of the Sihiyuan. When they were wondering who it was, they saw their uncle and aunt getting out of the car slowly, followed by their 2 cousins, their cousin-in-law, and their children. Qin Ran was shocked by this surprise. She was so excited that she did not know what to say. It did not occur to her that her uncle's family would come to the Sihiyuan for the spring festival. It was really unexpected. The Sihiyuan in the past was really crowded this year. Qin Ran only wanted to say, "This is the real spring festival." Chapter 392. He was a little panicked. That incident had caused a great disturbance. Not to mention how the Qin family had been besieged. What role had the Zhu family played in the disturbance? Anyway, the unexpected death of Qin Sheng's mother and old Master Qin's taking Qin Sheng away had made the Zhu family dislike the Qin family. The relationship between the 2 families had deteriorated. Although the Zhu family didn't keep in touch with the Qin family all these years, the elders had little contact with each other. The only special thing was that the Zhu family didn't have a problem with Qin Ran, their niece. They loved her dearly. She was innocent, but also the most pitiful one. After so many years, relying on his own ability and the resources that the Qin family had accumulated over the years, Qin Chang'an finally made a name for himself in Siju City. However, even so, the Zhu family was still lukewarm to Qin Chang'an. The Empress Dowager had never seen Qin Chang'an. She only saw her precious granddaughter, but she had helped Qin Chang'an a few times. Now, the relationship between the Qin family and the Zhu family had finally changed, which was Qin Sheng's return. That was why Zhu Weiguo had brought his family to the Sihiyuan for the spring festival. Ran, what's wrong? You don't welcome us? Wu Yajun walked up to Qin Ran slowly and said with a smile. Although she was old, she had maintained herself well. Zhu Weiguo walked up to Qin Sheng, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Good boy. You look more energetic than a few days ago." Qin Sheng was surprised. He didn't expect that his uncle and aunt would come to the Qin family Sihiyuan for the spring festival. But he wasn't as shocked as Qin Ran, who knew that the two families hadn't been close these years. "Uncle, aunt." Qin Sheng greeted them politely. Qin Ran came back to her senses and threw herself into Wu Yajun's arms excitedly. "Aunt, why are you here? I didn't expect that. Why didn't you tell me so that I could be mentally prepared?" Wu Yajun laughed. "You don't need to be mentally prepared. We told your father." "What's wrong? He didn't tell you?" Qin Ran said grumpily. "He didn't tell us. He deliberately kept us guessing. I was wondering why the old man was acting so weird today." The living room was filled with food, and the New Year's Eve dinner was much more sumptuous than in previous years. "It turns out that you are coming. The treatment is really different." Wu Yajun held Qin Ran's hand and said, "Child, how can you talk about your father like that? Your father probably wants to give you a surprise." Qin Ran said sincerely, Okay, it's a surprise. But I'm really happy. Our family has never been so lively." At this time, Qin Ran saw her cousins, cousin-in-law, and a few little guys behind them. She quickly let go of her aunt, pulled Qin Sheng to them, and introduced them. "Qin Sheng, let me introduce them to you. This is eldest cousin and eldest sister-in-law. This is second cousin and second sister-in-law. These two are eldest cousin's son and daughter. Their names are Fei Fei and Now Now. This is second cousin's son, Zhe. Auntie Ran. I don't like the name Now Now. My name is Zhu Siyuan." Qin Ran's eldest cousin's daughter was the youngest. She was mischievous and cute. Qin Ran picked her up and said, Okay. Your name is Zhu Siyuan." Although it was the first time for Qin Sheng to meet them, he was already used to this kind of rhythm. After all, they were all his relatives. So he did not have stage fright and greeted them politely. Qin Ran's eldest cousin was Zhu Qingyuan, and her second cousin was Zhu Fengyuan. The eldest cousin was a few years older than Qin Ran, and the second cousin was about the same age as her. The two cousins were very familiar with Qin Sheng when they were young. Qin Sheng always followed them. However, fate made fools of people. It was more than 20 years later when they met again. It's been more than 20 years. The changes are really too big. I really can't recognize you. Zhu Qingyuan, who was pursuing an official career, sighed with emotion. He had a deep memory of Qin Sheng. After all, when Qin Sheng left, he was already in junior high school. Qin Sheng did not know what to say. Now Zhu Fengyuan, who was already a little famous in the military, smiled bitterly and said, Yeah, I can't recognize you either. At that time, you were a cute little guy. Now you are a handsome young man. The two cousins' sisters-in-law did not have much contact with Qin Sheng. They just greeted him politely. However, they had heard from their husbands that they had a cousin who had been separated from them for many years. It did not occur to them that 2 days ago, their husbands would say that this cousin had come back. It did not occur to them that they would celebrate the spring festival in the Sihiyuan of the Qin family this year. Zhu Weiguo helped Qin Sheng out. All right, it's so cold outside. Don't let the kids catch a cold. Go in and catch up. Qin Sheng finally breathed a sigh of relief. Qin Ran walked to Qin Sheng and said, I'll get used to it gradually. My cousins always miss you. They were very nice to you when you were young. Second cousin even fought with you several times. At this time, Qin Chang'an came out to greet them at the gate of the Sihiyuan, followed by the old butler, Gong Sun. After all, Zhu Weiguo's rank was not low. Qin Chang'an dared to put on airs in front of others, but he did not dare to do so in front of Zhu Weiguo, his brother-in-law, or the Empress Dowager. However, the Empress Dowager was destined not to come to the Sihiyuan. Brother, sister-in-law, we've been waiting for you, Qin Chang'an said with a smile. Qin Chang'an, who had dominated Siju City for many years, did not dare to show any arrogance in front of Zhu Weiguo, a big shot. He could not forget Zhu Weiguo's rage when his wife passed away and his son ran away. If it were not for someone protecting him, Zhu Weiguo would have beaten him up. Zhu Weiguo and Qin Chang'an did not see each other often. They might only see each other a few times a year. They did not even call each other on normal days. This time, their whole family went to the Qin family Sihiyuan to celebrate the Spring Festival, not only to ease the relationship between the Zhu and Qin families, but also for Qin Ran and Qin Sheng, not for Qin Chang'an. Zhu Weiguo patted Zhu Weiguo's arm and said, "Let's go in and talk. I haven't had a drink with you for many years. You should drink with me more today." Qin Chang'an knew that this Confucian general could hold his liquor well, so he said, "I dare not say that I won't go home until I'm drunk, but I'm sure I can keep you company." Zhu Weiguo and Qin Chang'an, the two big shots, walked in the front. Qin Sheng and his aunt followed behind, chatting and laughing with his aunt. Qin Ran held Now in her arms and chatted with her two cousin-in-laws. This big family was very lively. Except for Zhu Weiguo and Wu Yajun, the others were familiar with the Qin family Sihiyuan. They would come here several times a year. At this moment, it was already dark. The air was filled with the smell of the Spring Festival. The big red lanterns in the Sihiyuan had been lit. Together with the decorations, it was extraordinarily beautiful. Several children were chattering and pointing here and there happily. Anyway, they liked to come here the most because this son-in-law's red packet was the biggest. The New Year's Eve dinner had been prepared long ago. At this moment, everyone was hungry, so they went to the dining room directly. When they saw the sumptuous New Year's Eve dinner on the table, they all had a good appetite. After all, Qin Chang'an had invited the executive chef of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which was the nearest to them, to cook. The main guest sat down. Naturally, Zhu Wei was sat in the main seat. Qin Chang'an and Wu Yajun sat on both sides with their families. Gongsun brought the prepared liquor over. Today, he brought 3 servants with him to serve them personally. Of course, the men drank liquor, while the women drank soft drinks and red wine. Both of Qin Sheng's cousin-in-laws drank soft drinks because they needed to drive home at night. After drinking a few glasses of liquor, the New Year's Eve dinner became lively. Like every other family, everyone ate, chatted, and drank. The TV in the dining room was broadcasting the familiar year after year, and everyone was recalling the little things that happened in this year. This year, the biggest event of the Zhu family and the Qin family should be Qin Sheng's return. During this New Year's Eve dinner, Qin Sheng drank a lot. Anyway, the father and the son would accompany his uncle and cousins to enjoy themselves to the fullest. Fortunately, Qin Sheng was a good drinker. Whether it was playing drinking games or toasting, he was not afraid. However, his 2 cousins were a bit tired. After the New Year's Eve dinner, everyone moved to the living room. The children played in the yard. Gongsun had bought a lot of toys in advance, and he would let them enjoy themselves to the fullest tonight. The adults were chatting and playing cards in the living room. At this time, the Spring Festival Gala also began. Although it was not as popular as before, it was still an indispensable dish for people all over the country on New Year's Eve. Zhu Qingyuan, who came back from Jiangsu, brought the most popular game there, which was called Beating the Eggs. The game was not complicated, but it was not simple either. There were 4 people playing against each other. However, for these extremely smart people, they understood the rules as soon as they were told. Of course, Qin Sheng would play with Qin Chang'an, while Zhu Weiguo and Zhu Qingyuan would play against each other. The 2 pairs of father and son would play against each other to see who would come out on top. The women, on the other hand, gave advice and suggestions at the back. At the same time, they would stand in when the men answered the phone. After all, these men were busier than anyone else during the New Year's Eve. Except for Qin Sheng, the others' phone calls almost never stopped. Therefore, the game could only be carried on intermittently. When it was just past 11 o'clock, the game was over. At this time, everyone started to pay New Year's greetings to the elders. Except for a few children, the others were all holding their phones. Of course, for example, Zhu Weiguo and Qin Chang'an, They still had to pay New Year's greetings to the especially important people. Qin Sheng did not pay attention to them. He took his phone and went upstairs alone. First, he sent a video call to Xin and Annie Wong to pay New Year's greetings. After chatting with them for a while, he hung up. Seeing that they were at home alone, Qin Sheng felt somewhat sad. Then he called Hao Lei. As soon as the phone rang, it was answered. Hao Lei could not wait to ask Qin Sheng about his life in Beijing. Qin Sheng told him honestly that this was the busiest spring festival he had ever experienced. Hao Lei also felt gratified. After the conversation, Qin Sheng called Lao Chang to pay New Year's greetings. As expected, Lao Chang's phone was still turned off. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not know where Lao Chang had gone. However, he was used to his elusiveness. Nevertheless, he was sure that nothing bad had happened to him. In the end, Qin Sheng stood by the window with his phone in his hand, looking at the children who were playing in the yard thoughtfully. Qin Sheng was somewhat restless and hesitant. Finally, he dialed Lin Su's phone. He made Lin Su wait for so long and only contacted her after such a long time. Qin Sheng felt somewhat guilty. After all, she was his real girlfriend. Moreover, the relationship between him and the Lin family was so complicated. Lin Su, who was caught in the middle, was even more uncomfortable. He did not know how she had been during this period. Qin Sheng was thinking about how to ask Lin Su, what to say and what to ask. However, at this time, a familiar voice came through the phone. The number you have dialed has been turned off. Chapter 393. The most important thing, the next update time will be at this time. Excluding Song Jiqiu, Lin Su was the only girlfriend Qin Sheng had officially acknowledged, except for Su Qin, his first love. In the past 2 years, Lin Su, the beautiful and fair daughter of a rich family, had accompanied Qin Sheng through many hardships and grievances. Otherwise, Yin Chaozong would not have been so crazy about her. She gave up everything, fell out with her family, and lived the most ordinary life with Qin Sheng. Which excellent and arrogant woman could do this? Especially during the half a year when Qin Sheng was recovering from his injury, he did not know what would have happened to him. Therefore, no one would doubt Qin Sheng's love for Lin Su. It was not that he did not want to contact Lin Su. Firstly, he was in a complicated mood these days. He did not have time to find Lin Su in a short time, and he did not know how to explain to her what had happened during this period. Secondly, he could imagine Lin Su's life after she returned to the Lin family. If he did not show up, it might be better. If the Lin family knew that he was still pestering Lin Su, it would only make Lin Su's situation in the Lin family more difficult. The only thing he had to do was to go to the Lin family above board, slap the Lin family in the face, and take Lin Su away. Otherwise, everything else would be meaningless to Lin Su. Now, Qin Sheng had planned to go to Ningbo after the Spring Festival. Therefore, he contacted Lin Su to let her be a little prepared. However, he did not expect that Lin Su's phone was also turned off. Qin Sheng was a little panicked. He was not worried that Lin Su would change her mind. It was not because he was confident, but because he trusted Lin Su very much. Lin Su had been with him through so many ups and downs. If she was really disappointed in him, she would not have stood behind him and supported him unconditionally. He was just worried about Lin Su's situation in the Lin family. If she silently bore all kinds of pressure, it would make Qin Sheng very uncomfortable. Now Qin Sheng could only pray that the Lin family would not do anything excessive. Otherwise, they would not blame him for turning against them. After thinking about it, Qin Sheng was still worried. He called Lin Su again, but her phone was still turned off. Qin Sheng had to sigh and send a short message. Wife, Happy New Year. I'm fine. I will pick you up after the Spring Festival. As for whether Lin Su could see it or not, he did not care. In a few minutes, it would be the new year. Qin Ran found that Qin Sheng was not around after making the call. She could not help but feel a little worried, so she went upstairs to look for Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng had just come out of his room. It's the Spring Festival. Why don't you look happy? Qin Ran asked worriedly. Anyone could tell that Qin Sheng had a lot on his mind. Qin Sheng didn't know what to say. He sighed and said, Sister, Lin Su's cell phone is turned off. I can't get in touch with her. I'm afraid that she might be wronged in the Lin family. Qin Sheng did not hide anything from his sister. He was really worried about Lin Su and was already thinking of killing his way to the Lin family. Qin Ran did not take it seriously. On the contrary, she teased casually, "Oh, now you know how to love your wife. Then I will be jealous in the future." Qin Sheng didn't understand. "I'm burning with anxiety, and you're still joking with me? All right, it's the new year. I won't tease you anymore. Don't worry about Lin Su. How can the Qin family not care about our future daughter-in-law? Uncle Gong's son has already made arrangements. Lin Su is fine, but the Lin family has chosen a new marriage partner. Lin Su has been under a lot of pressure recently. If it weren't for the old lady's protection, she would have been wronged," Qin Ran explained honestly. The Qin family never made any mistakes. After all, Lin Su was Qin Sheng's girlfriend. A fair, rich, and beautiful girl who was excellent in all aspects chose a poor loser with no family background. Not everyone had this kind of courage. Of course, the Qin family would not wrong Lin Su. Moreover, Qin Sheng had no time to be distracted. Naturally, there would be people to worry about these things. Qin Sheng did not expect that the Qin family had already made arrangements. He said in surprise, "Sister, really? Did Nangong go there?" As for the pressure the Lin family put on Lin Su, it was within Qin Sheng's expectation. He silently remembered it in his heart. He would make the Lin family pay the price later. "No, Uncle Gong's son arranged for someone else," Qin Ran explained with a smile. Qin Sheng said in surprise, "Then why didn't Nangong come back for the new year?" "She went to Palau for vacation. She's enjoying herself these 2 days. She will come back to Beijing on the 5th day of the new year," Qin Ran said with a smile. "Well, it's almost 12 o'clock. Everyone is waiting for you. Let's hurry down. We were video chatting with Grandma just now. My sister-in-law almost spilled the beans. Luckily, we covered it up. You're the New Year gift we prepared for Grandma." Hearing this, Qin Sheng felt very warm. Thinking of his grandmother who had been waiting for him and who loved him the most, Qin Sheng was looking forward to it. When Qin Sheng returned to the living room, everyone asked him all at once. Someone teased him about whether he was chatting with his girlfriend on the phone. Qin Sheng did not explain and just brushed it off casually. 10, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1. When the New Year bell rang, the young people cheered happily and wished each other a happy new year. If it was in the past, they would not be so happy. But this year, it was rare for two families to celebrate the New Year's Eve together. The atmosphere was especially lively. The children were even more excited because they could get their New Year's money. The elders were very calm. After all, they were people who had one foot in the grave. After so many years, they were not used to this. Moreover, they were people who had been through a lot. At this time, the children began to kowtow to their grandparents and other elders. Gong's son had already wrapped the red packets according to the practice in the past. He had already given them to Qin Chang'an, Qin Sheng, and Qin Ran in advance. The red packets were only a few thousand yuan. After all, it was just a tradition. The two older children were more sensible. They had prepared a lot of New Year's greetings. The youngest, Now, was the most interesting. After receiving the red packets, she was afraid that her parents would ask for it, so she turned around and ran to the yard. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran also received the red packets from their uncle and aunt. Qin Ran was a little embarrassed because she could receive red packets from her uncle, aunt, grandmother, and small aunt every year. At first, Qin Ran refused, saying that she was already so old and did not need to receive red packets. The elders said that as long as she was not married, she would always be a child. Since they were urging her to get married in a disguised way, of course, Qin Ran received the red packets. Anyway, it was money. The new year began. The Zhu family spent an unforgettable New Year's Eve in the Sihiyuan of the Qin family. At this time, it was time for them to go back. After all, they would be busy tomorrow and could not stay in the Qin family, even if the guest room of the Qin family could accommodate so many people. Qin Chang'an led Qin Ran and Qin Sheng to see the Zhu family out. They chatted for a while at the door and reminded them again. After watching them get in the car and leave, he walked back to the Sihiyuan. On the way back, Qin Ran deliberately teased, "Dad, how did you trick my uncle to come here? Did you get along well with him?" Qin Chang'an did not dare to fool this general, for he might go for wool and come home shorn. He told the truth. "I didn't fool him. It was your uncle who took the initiative to call me. I was also surprised at that time. However, everyone could see that your uncle didn't want to get along well with me. He did it for you and your brother." It was not until then that Qin Ran understood. She said thoughtfully, "Oh, I understand. Uncle is really considerate." Of course, Qin Sheng did not understand the complicated reasons, but he would understand later. He was the key to change the relationship between the Zhu family and the Qin family. When he went back to the living room, Gong Sun was arranging the servants to clean up the mess. After all, the real work would start tomorrow. Every year, the official end would be after the 15th day of the first lunar month. The Sihiyuan of the Qin family was crowded with people and carriages. Not everyone could enter this Sihiyuan. "Uncle Gong Sun, Happy New Year. Thank you for your hard work." Qin Ran walked to Gong Sun and said with a sweet smile. She had never regarded Uncle Gong Sun as an outsider. After all, even the old man did not treat Uncle Gong Sun as an outsider. He had always treated Uncle Gong Sun as his biological brother. In these years, Uncle Gong Sun had done his best for the Qin family. Qin Sheng had been back for a long time. Of course, he knew Gong Suan's position in the Qin family. He smiled and said, "Happy New Year, Uncle Gong Sun." Gong Sun took out the prepared red packet from his pocket and said, "It's my job. It's not hard at all. Here's a red packet for you. Don't blame me for being stingy." "Thank you, Uncle Gong Sun." Qin Ran took it without hesitation. She had received red packets from Uncle Gong Sun every year for so many years. She had never refused them because they were his kind intentions. Qin Sheng felt a little embarrassed. Gong Sun directly put the red packet in Qin Sheng's hand. Just now, it was not suitable for him to show up in front of the Zhu family, so he could only give the two children red packets now. Qin Sheng looked at his sister. Apparently, Qin Ran wanted him to take it. Qin Sheng had no choice but to take it. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Uncle Gong Sun." At this time, Qin Chang'an saw that it was getting late. He said to them, "Go to bed early. You have a task tomorrow morning." Qin Ran knew what he meant. Qin Sheng was a little curious, but he did not ask more. The sister and brother chatted with the servants for a while and then went upstairs to rest. Lying on the bed, Qin Sheng could not calm down. He thought about many things. This spring festival was destined to be unforgettable for him. It had never been so lively, especially during the spring festival last year. For him, he was still lying in bed. Fortunately, Lin Su was there to accompany him, so he did not feel so lonely. Thinking about Lin Su, Qin Sheng did not know whether Lin Su was also thinking about him at this time. After being separated from Lin Su for so long, Qin Sheng missed her more and more. He could not help but want time to pass faster, so that he could go to the Lin family earlier to pick her up. Thinking about it, Qin Sheng fell asleep. On the first day of the first lunar month, when Qin Sheng woke up, everyone was already waiting for him in the living room. The kitchen made dumplings overnight. It was a tradition of people in the north to eat dumplings during the spring festival. However, the Qin family ate dumplings on the first day of the first lunar month. After eating the dumplings, Qin Chang'an asked Gong Sun to take out the things that had been prepared. He said to Qin Ran, Ran, these are prepared for the Song family. I won't go this year. Take Qin Sheng to pay a New Year visit to your grandpa Song." Qin Ran thought about it. Of course, she knew what this meant. Every year, the New Year visit would start from the Song family. However, in the past, it was the old man who paid the New Year visit in person. This year, she would take Qin Sheng there. Not to mention that the Qin family and the Song family were friends for generations, and the Song family lived in an alley a few streets away. Not to mention that without the Song family, the old man would not be in such a position. The most important thing today was the big event between the Qin family and the Song family. Qin Ran did not know how to comment on it. She just followed the old man's instructions and did what she should do. As for the other things, it was Qin Sheng's choice. Qin Sheng did not refuse Qin Chang'an's arrangement. Since he had accepted this identity, He knew that as Qin Chang'an's only son, he would inherit everything of the Qin family in the future, including these resources. Today was just the beginning. Chapter 394. Grandpa Song, I don't understand. I said in advance that I would adjust the update time. What do you mean by I will work hard during the voting period and stop updating after voting? Look, from the 5th of this month, I will update twice a day, and I will update regularly. At Qin Chang'an's level, he was most afraid of festivals. After all, there were not many people who could ask him to pay New Year's greetings, but there were many people who wanted to pay New Year's greetings to him. It was a headache to know how to do it properly. However, the New Year's holiday was only a few days. No matter how Qin Chang'an arranged it, he would not be able to do anything. Therefore, in the past years, he would go out early in the morning to pay New Year's greetings and come back at noon to welcome the guests. He was so confident because he was in this position. When he was young, Qin Chang'an would be exhausted after a spring festival. This year, Qin Sheng was back. Qin Chang'an could finally be a little lazy. As his son, Qin Sheng could totally represent him. Moreover, this was also his intention to tell everyone that his son, Qin Chang'an, was back and would officially take over from today onwards. He wanted to know how his opponents, who had always made fun of him for not having a son, would look after knowing this. He was afraid that they would be so angry that their teeth would itch. In life, the most important thing was to fight for one's dignity. It was estimated that Qin Chang'an would be even more arrogant when he met his opponents. Qin Sheng calmly accepted Qin Chang'an's arrangement. Whether it was to pay New Year's greetings on behalf of Qin Chang'an, to sit with the guests at noon, or to officially enter the company after the New Year, Qin Sheng had no objection, because these were all things that would happen sooner or later. Refuse? Qin Sheng would not. He would not be so fragile, because this was what he deserved. It was just that he was late for more than 20 years. Moreover, at least he knew that this was the only way he could successfully avenge Qingyang. Qin Ran took Qin Sheng out with the gifts. Gong Sun arranged a slightly low-key outie for them. There were rules about which house to pay New Year's greetings, what gift to take, and what car to drive. Gong Sun had been in charge of the Qin family's affairs for so many years, of course. He had already remembered these rules and never made any mistakes. Qin Ran was no stranger to the Song family. Although she did not have much contact with the younger generation of the Song family, she would accompany her father to visit Grandpa Song every year. In the past, one of the elders of the Song family had intended to matchmake her with the extremely outstanding younger generation of the Song family. The two of them had also met, but Qin Ran eventually kept her distance. Putting aside the fact that she had vowed not to get married until she found her younger brother, the most important thing was that she did not appreciate the man whom many people had high hopes for. Many people were disappointed that she did not marry that man from the Song family. They wondered if Qin Sheng would have a relationship with that woman who was not inferior to her cousin. Although the two families had a seemingly childish engagement in the past, Old Master Song was more supportive of it. Qin Chang'an did not dare to have too much say in this matter. After all, this was decided by the two old masters back then. It was not up to him to interfere. Therefore, knowing that Qin Sheng had a girlfriend, Qin Chang'an could only do this. As for Qin Sheng's feelings, Qin Chang'an did not want to interfere too much, because based on his understanding of Qin Sheng, this would definitely make Qin Sheng extremely disgusted and strongly resist, which would make their already fragile relationship even worse. After all, Qin Sheng and Lin Su had a very deep relationship, and they had gone through a lot of ups and downs. It was obviously impossible for Qin Sheng to give up Lin Su and choose that girl from the Song family. Qin Sheng could not do it. However, Qin Chang'an was also in a difficult position. He could not offend Old Master Song. After all, this matter had always been on Old Master Song's mind. He had been thinking about it for so many years. Therefore, Qin Chang'an could only bite the bullet and do it. However, after all, when it came to love, both sides had to agree. After all, a melon that was forcefully twisted would not be sweet. If that girl from the Song family did not like Qin Sheng, then Qin Chang'an would have room to negotiate with Old Master Song. Why did Qin Chang'an think so? because that girl from the Song family was really too outstanding and she was very arrogant. Based on the current Qin Sheng, he was not worthy of her at all. It was not that he underestimated Qin Sheng, but he knew himself. In the beginning, Qin Ran did not understand why Qin Chang'an did this, because she knew that Qin Chang'an was very satisfied with Lin Su. Moreover, everything that Lin Su did for Qin Sheng made the Qin family could not find any fault at all. Although Qin Sheng was not worthy of Lin Su in the past, and Lin Su was not worthy of Qin Sheng now, Lin Su could still make such a decision at that time. Did Qin Sheng want Qin Shimi to give up Lin Su and break her heart now that he had become so powerful? This was not the way to be a person. However, it was not until Qin Chang'an finished telling her the ins and outs of the whole thing that Qin Ran understood the old man's helplessness. This was indeed a dilemma. At present, they could only do this. No one dared to offend old Master Song. After all, his status was too high. At present, the only hope was that the girl from the Song family did not like Qin Sheng. It only took 10 minutes to drive from the Qin family Sihiyuan to the Song family. Qin Ran was familiar with the road, while Qin Sheng, who was in the passenger seat, was absent-minded. For him, this was just a task. He just needed to go through the motions and complete it smoothly. The Song family and the Qin family are old friends. I heard from the old man that Grandpa was kind to Grandpa Song and helped him in the two most important periods of his life. So these years, the Song family has been taking good care of our family. Qin Ran casually introduced to Qin Sheng. She now liked to call Qin Chang'an old man, because the old man was really old. Qin Sheng just nodded and said, "Oh," indicating that he understood. Some things were just the beginning for him now. These were the resources accumulated by the Qin family for several generations. As for how much he could inherit in the end, it would depend on his ability. It did not mean that he could take over everything because of his identity or Qin Chang'an's deliberate action. Thinking about it, Qin Chang'an was like this in the past. How to make these people approve of him was not something that could be done in a day or two. The Song family was located in an alley behind Jingshan. The Sihiyuan in this alley was similar to the one where the Qin family was located, where rich and powerful big shots lived. However, compared with the two-story Sihiyuan that the Qin family had renovated, the Song family Sihiyuan was more low-key. It was similar to an ordinary Sihiyuan, but it looked more mysterious. Although it was only early in the morning, there were many people on the road. After all, today was the first day of the Lunar New Year, and everyone was walking on the streets to pay New Year's greetings. The alley where the Song family was located was not narrow. There were only 2 cars parked at the entrance. Qin Ran parked the car casually on the side of the road, and then led Qin Sheng out of the car with the gifts. Qin Ran pointed to the gray iron gate and said, "This is it. We'll leave in half an hour." She went forward and rang the doorbell. Not long after, a middle-aged man came out to open the door. There was a surveillance camera at the door, so the identity of the people inside had already been confirmed. Otherwise, they would not have opened the door so casually. "Uncle He, Happy New Year." Qin Ran smiled after seeing the middle-aged man who opened the door. The man, who was called Uncle He by Qin Ran, squinted his eyes and smiled. "Old Master is already waiting for you inside." The middle-aged man nodded at Qin Sheng again. He did not ask more about Qin Sheng's identity. He just took the gift from Qin Sheng's hand. If it were someone else, the middle-aged man might have changed his face. However, no one dared to ask for a snub without being invited. The middle-aged man seemed to be very polite, but he did not say much. After all, he was familiar with Qin Chang'an and did not have much interaction with Qin Ran, who was a junior. Qin Ran said to Qin Sheng in a low voice, "This is Grandpa Song's secretary after he retired. He has been working for Grandpa Song for many years. Sometimes, whether he can see Grandpa Song or not, he just needs to say a word." The gatekeeper of the Prime Minister was a level 7 official. Qin Sheng understood this. Since he could serve the old master for so many years, he was obviously deeply trusted. This was similar to Uncle Gongsuan's position in the Qin family. However, the only thing that shocked Qin Sheng was that there were guards on duty after entering the door. Who was this old master? The layout of Song Jia Sihiyuan was similar to that of the Qin family. It seemed that most Sihiyuan were like this. After entering the door, there was the front yard, where 3 cars were parked. After passing through the corridor, they walked into the main yard. There were east and west wing rooms on both sides. The main room facing south was located in the north. The yard was full of flowers and plants, and it was clean. At this moment, in the living room of the main room, old Master Song, who was wearing a Chinese tunic suit, was sitting in the main seat. Below him sat 3 men with different auras. 2 of them were about the same age as Uncle He, who was in his 50s or 60s. The last one was slightly younger, looking like he was in his early 30s. He's here. Old Master Song, who was already in his 90s, had good eyesight and ears. He was also very energetic, which was rare. The others also heard the noise outside and could not help but cheer up. They came so early today because they had an important task. When Uncle He pushed open the door of the living room, the others subconsciously looked in his direction. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Old Master, Ran is here." Qin Ran and Qin Sheng followed him in. Qin Ran smiled and looked relaxed. After all, she was familiar with the people of the Song family. However, when she saw the young man sitting there, she was somewhat surprised. It did not occur to her that he would also be here, which made her feel awkward. Qin Ran had been born in such a family since she was a child. She had seen many seniors and tycoons in high positions. She was also very familiar with them, so she did not feel pressured at all. However, Qin Sheng was somewhat nervous. After all, this was the first time for him to experience such a big scene. He had never seen such a family before. Since Qin Chang'an paid so much attention to it, it was obviously not an ordinary family. Consequently, Qin Sheng kept taking deep breaths before entering the door to adjust his mentality so that he could face these things calmly. However, even so, when he walked into the living room, he still felt more pressured. That was because he instantly felt that everyone's attention was focused on him, which made him very surprised. However, he immediately understood that the people of the Song family had obviously known his identity. However, what happened next shocked Qin Sheng so much that he almost lost his composure. When he subconsciously raised his head and looked at Grandpa Song, who was sitting in the main seat, which the Qin family paid special attention to, he instantly recognized who this old man was. He was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat and was subconsciously stunned. Maybe many young people did not know who he was, but Qin Sheng, who had a wide range of knowledge, was very clear about this Grandpa Song's identity. However, he had only seen this old man on TV or in the news. It did not occur to him that he would be able to see the old master in person today. Chapter 395. Who was she? How powerful was the Qin family? At present, Qin Sheng was not sure. He had never asked his sister Qin Ran, Qin Chang'an, or Uncle Gong's son. He only guessed from the side or from a few words. After all, he had started to take over the resources of the Qin family and was unveiling the mysterious veil bit by bit. He had thought that he would be sure after the spring festival. However, he did not expect that the first step he took today would completely shock him. It was completely beyond his imagination. However, he could already be sure about the Zhu family. It was clear from the moment he saw his uncle. After all, his uncle's identity was there. He just needed to check it out a little. This was also the fundamental reason why Qin Sheng had the confidence to face Yin Chaozong's group of sworn enemies. At this moment, Qin Ran did not notice Qin Sheng's strange expression at all. She slowly walked to the kind-looking old man sitting in the main seat. There were 2 red futons at the feet of the old man. Qin Ran smiled and knelt down. Ran wishes Grandpa Song a happy new year. May everything go well and you live a long and healthy life. Qin Sheng was staring at the old man not far away rudely. The rest of the Song family did not have any opinions. They could completely understand the reaction of the child in front of them. Obviously, the one in the Qin family did not tell the child the background of the Song family. Otherwise, he would not be like this after seeing the old master. The young man sitting at the very bottom was slightly displeased and somewhat disappointed. Was this the future brother-in-law? Alas, the young man sighed subconsciously. How could his arrogant cousin fall in love with this man from the Chin family? He did not know what Grandpa was thinking. It was not until he heard his sister's familiar voice that he came back to his senses. He also sensed the young man's dissatisfaction with him. He could not help scolding himself in his heart for not being promising at all and failing at the crucial moment. Now he was representing the Chin family. Girl, get up quickly. The ground is cold. You haven't come to see Grandpa for a long time. The old master bowed slightly and stretched out his hand. He was very thin, and his face was full of wrinkles and age spots. However, he gave people an indescribable aura, totally different from ordinary old people. Chin Ran did not dare to let the old man bend down to help her. She quickly stood up to support the old man and said, "Grandpa's song, I'm afraid that some people don't welcome me." After Chin Ran said that, she deliberately glanced at the young man below. When the others heard this, they all laughed at the same time. What a pair of enemies. Unfortunately, they were not fated to be together. Oh, you two kids always bicker every time you meet. The old man clearly knew the relationship between his grandson and the Chin family's girl. He could not help laughing. The young man stared back at Chin Ran without changing his expression, as if he was deliberately provoking her. Chin Ran ignored him and looked at Chin Sheng, who had come to his senses and was walking over. She said, "Chin Sheng, come here quickly and wish Grandpa Song a Happy New Year." It was only then that everyone withdrew their gazes and looked at the young man in front of them again. It was as if they wanted to see through Chin Sheng's soul, which made him very uncomfortable. After the old master looked at Chin Sheng again, the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He sighed inexplicably, and there was some sadness in his eyes. Of course, he knew these past events of the Chin family better than anyone else. He did not dare to comment on the storm that year, but it did almost destroy the Chin family. Some time ago, when Chin Chang'an called him and told him about this, he did not come to his senses for a long time. First, he felt that Chin Sheng had a hard life. He was innocent, but he had been wronged for so many years. However, what made him feel relieved was that he finally came back. Second, he also knew that his old friend had died a few years ago. After waiting for so many years, he finally got this news, which made him feel somewhat sad. After all, he was indebted to his old friend, which was also an important reason why he took care of Chin Chang'an so much. He just wanted to return the Chin family's favor. It had been more than 20 years since they last met. When the old master saw Chin Sheng, he thought of the story of his old friend, which was why he let out a sigh. Chin Sheng slowly knelt down on the rush cushion and said in a low voice, "Chin Sheng wishes Grandpa Song a Happy New Year." There were no overly polite words, just simple blessings. After all, he was not as familiar with the Song family as his sister was. Moreover, he had not recovered from the shock just now. He did not know how to face this old man who used to be a god. "Child, get up, get up." The old man subconsciously wanted to help Chin Sheng up. Chin Ran hurriedly gestured for Chin Sheng to get up. After all, the old man was so old, they could not afford any accidents. Chin Sheng stood up slowly, bowed slightly, and looked at the old man with a smile. The old man reached out to hold Chin Sheng's hand and said, "Little guy, you have grown up. You definitely can't remember that when I held you when you were young, you peed all over me." Chin Sheng hurriedly took 2 steps forward and took the old man's hand. He could feel the strength of the old man's hand. Although he could not remember those stories when he was young, he could feel that the old man valued him. "Dad, let the 2 children sit down and talk." The middle-aged man on the left side smiled and tried to smooth things over. He was also afraid that the old man would be too excited. The old man came to his senses and said, "I'm happy. Xiao He, bring a chair over and let the children sit next to me. I want to have a good talk with them." Xiao He was the secretary whom Chin Ran called Uncle He. He nodded with a smile and took 2 chairs from the back. The young man stood up and took one of them. When he walked to Chin Ran's side, he said in a voice that only they could hear, "Is your brother just so?" After hearing this, Chin Ran looked very unhappy. When she took the chair, she did not hesitate to step on the tip of the man's foot when no one was paying attention. The man almost cried out in pain. When he wanted to question her, Qin Ran was already chatting with the old man. He had no choice but to take it. Have you seen your grandmother? The old man asked casually after Qin Ran and Qin Sheng sat down. He was very familiar with the old lady of the Zhu family. After all, they had been old friends for many years. However, the old lady lived in Shanghai most of the time and seldom went back to Beijing. They had not seen each other for some time. After all, the old lady was born in a big family in Shanghai and was used to life there. Qin Ran replied with a smile, "Grandpa Song, not yet. My brother and I are going to Shanghai on the 3rd day of the Chinese New Year. Grandma doesn't know that my brother is back yet." "Oh, you hit it well. Even the old lady doesn't know. But if she knew, she would be very happy. I remember that every time I went there, the old lady praised Qin Sheng a lot," the old man said with a smile. Qin Ran looked at Qin Sheng and nodded with a smile. Grandpa Song is right. Grandma loves him the most. At this time, the old man seemed to think of something. He squinted at the middle-aged man on the right and said, "Xingwen, where is you? Wasn't she here just now?" The middle-aged man's face changed slightly. What was to come would come eventually. So he ordered the young man downstairs. "Hushing, call you over." Song Hushing nodded and looked at Qin Sheng, who was not far away. He stood up thoughtfully and walked out of the living room. Apart from when he was a child, this was the first time he had seen Qin Sheng. He did not know why he had a natural resistance to this man. Maybe it was because of the marriage. He felt that no one was worthy of his cousin, including the man in front of him. However, he was not a stranger to Qin Ran. After all, they had almost been together. Unfortunately, some people had made things difficult for them. Maybe it was fate that they were not fated to be together. So until now, his friends in the circle still joked about this matter. Just when Song Hushing was about to open the door and go out, the living room door was pushed open from the outside. He heard a woman's clear voice saying, "Grandpa, I'm here." Chapter 396. A Blind Date Chapter 395. Let's adjust the update time. It will be at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the future. The Song family had been keeping a low profile for so many years, mainly because the old master was very strict with his family. Just like the Yin family motto, born in troubled times, grown up in the army, wandered about, and learned much. The old master's life was like this. He was born in that unstable era, grew up in the merciless war, and finally climbed out of the pile of corpses. He lived at the top of the court and witnessed the process of the country and its people going from troubled times to prosperous times. The old master cultivated his moral character, took care of the family, and pacified the world. He never dared to be negligent, because he often thought about why he was still alive while his comrades, brothers, and friends died in troubled times. He did not dare to attribute his current position to his own hard work. It was fought for by thousands of people, so he was strict with himself and his descendants. If they had any pride of being born in this family or used the family's achievements for the slightest benefit, they would be scolded and reprimanded by him. Therefore, the second generation of the Song family was very ordinary and did not have any great achievements. Basically, they all worked in the government offices. However, in the third generation, there were two outstanding juniors. One was Song Hushing, who was sitting below. Many people had high hopes for him, and he was one of the core figures among the young people of this generation in Siju City. After graduating from graduate school, he started training at the grassroots level. He took one step at a time. Whether it was the leaders or his colleagues, they all spoke highly of him. Moreover, he was willing to do practical things, and his conduct was excellent. Now, he was already a deputy director of a department with real power, and his future was limitless. The other was the woman who had just pushed the door open. She was the youngest granddaughter of the old master and also Song Hushing's cousin. How did many people evaluate her? Just like her name, Song Ruyu, she was a gentleman, gentle as jade. If a woman was described as a gentleman, then this woman was not simple. She was an extraordinary woman in the world, and also a clear stream in this impetuous society. At this moment, Qin Sheng did not know who this woman was, but he was attracted by her temperament. He did not know how to describe this woman's temperament. It was like seeing a stranger and knowing that she must be a good person at first glance. The woman was very beautiful, no worse than his sister. However, Qin Sheng felt that it was an insult to pay attention to her appearance at this moment, because her temperament had already covered her beauty. She tied her hair with the most common black hairband, without any makeup. Her clothes were also very simple. She wore a gray sweater and a light-colored coat, and white jeans, and a pair of black cloth shoes. Qin Sheng was surprised. When Qin Sheng was young, he loved to wear this kind of cloth shoes the most. They were not the old Beijing cloth shoes that could be bought outside. Instead, they were the layers of soles made by the aunties in the village. They were especially comfortable and sturdy. However, he had not worn them in recent years. Therefore, when he saw the woman in front of him wearing black cloth shoes, Qin Sheng was absent-minded. The old master's eyes were full of love when he saw his granddaughter. This kind of cloth shoes made by the aunties in the village was very comfortable and solid. He had not worn them in recent years, so he was absent-minded when he saw this woman wearing black cloth shoes. Are you in the study again? The old master's eyes were full of love when he saw his granddaughter. It was the youngest of all his grandchildren, but she was also the one he was most satisfied with and appreciated. The old master sometimes wondered if the old man of the Qin family had already seen through the secrets of heaven, so he had played such a joke on him. Song Ryu pursed her lips and smiled without showing her teeth, but her eyes were full of smiles, like the warm sun outside, which made people feel very friendly. Sister Ran, long time no see. You look a little haggard. Song Ryu walked to Qin Ran and Qin Sheng and smiled. Her steps were very light, like a spring breeze. Wherever she walked, the grass and trees would flourish. Qin Ran liked this woman from the Song family very much. She was used to all kinds of women, but Song Ryu was unique. Her character seemed to be incompatible with the secular world, but she had a unique way to blend in. Qin Ran could not help thinking that it might be a good thing for such a woman to marry into the Qin family. Qin Ran did not know why she felt ashamed every time she saw Song Ryu. She smiled faintly and said, "Ryu, I am haggard, but you are getting more and more beautiful." Song Ryu lowered her head slightly and said shyly, "Sister, you are joking again." She actually did not like to be called beautiful by others, especially by strangers. But she was relatively familiar with Qin Ran, so she was not angry. Do you know who he is?" Old Master Song pointed at Qin Sheng and said calmly. They had met several times when they were young, but those memories were a little distant, so they probably could not remember them. Song Ryu did not know who would come to pay New Year's greetings today. After all, many people came to pay New Year's greetings every year, but she was not here most of the time. She knew that Uncle Qin and Sister Ran would come to pay New Year's greetings on the morning of the first day of every year. She had met them a few times. But this year, she was a little confused about why Grandpa asked them to come so early on the morning of the first day of every year. She thought there would be some distinguished guests, but she had not seen them until now. Of course, she did not think that Sister Ran and this man would be distinguished guests that Grandpa would pay so much attention to. Maybe only those leaders or old friends could make Grandpa pay attention to them. Song Ryu first smiled and nodded at Qin Sheng. She did not look him up and down impolitely. Then she slightly frowned and looked at Qin Sheng a few times. It was not long or short, so Qin Sheng did not feel disgusted or looked down upon. From these little things, Qin Sheng could see Song Ryu's character. Then Song Ryu looked at Grandpa, smiled, and shook her head. "Grandpa, I really didn't recognize him. I'm afraid that I haven't seen him for many years. Otherwise, I would have remembered him." Old Master squinted and smiled. Then he explained to his granddaughter, "Haha, even I didn't recognize him." Of course you didn't recognize him. In fact, you haven't seen him for 22 years. He is the naughty boy who brought you candied fruits every time when you were little." Originally, Song Ryu looked very calm, but after hearing Grandpa's words, she became a little absent-minded and murmured, "Qin Sheng?" Old Master had done what he should do. The rest of the things were left to the two children to catch up. So he said, take Qin Sheng to the yard. I have something to ask your sister Anne." Although Song Ryu was still in a daze, she nodded and said softly, "Okay." When she turned around, Song Ryu couldn't help but look at Qin Sheng. It had been more than 20 years. She didn't expect to see Qin Sheng again. She had heard about the past of the Qin family from her grandpa and knew that the boy, who always smiled from ear to ear, had disappeared. She didn't expect to see him again today. Qin Sheng looked at Qin Ran and smiled at Grandpa Song. Then he nodded to the others and followed Song Ryu out of the yard. In the yard, the sun was just right. The flowers and trees were stretching their muscles and bones, enjoying the rare sunshine. Song Ryu, who was walking in front, happened to be standing under a tree. The sunlight shone on her through the gaps between the trees, which made Qin Sheng feel like he had seen her somewhere. Of course, it was not when he was little. After all, he had long forgotten about it. "I didn't expect to see you again." Song Ryu turned around and looked at Qin Sheng. She smiled shyly and said, "I only remember what you looked like when you were little. I really can't recognize you now." Qin Sheng didn't know why Grandpa Song asked him to follow this woman. Although Grandpa Song said that they knew each other when they were little, Qin Sheng had long forgotten about it. He really didn't know what to talk about with this woman. He didn't know why he didn't have any confidence in front of this woman. "I almost forgot everything when I was little. I can only remember my mother. I can't even recognize my sister. I didn't expect life to be so magical." Qin Sheng smiled bitterly. He didn't want to talk about the past. It was all in the past, and there was no right or wrong. Song Ryu could feel the sadness in Qin Sheng's words. She focused on her mother. She knew that Aunt Zhu had passed away when Qin Sheng was little. She wanted to comfort him, but she didn't know what to say. She also knew that anything she said would be hypocritical and polite, so she didn't say anything. "You know my name, but I don't know yours." Qin Sheng heard Grandpa Song calling her you-er. He couldn't call her you-er, so he took the initiative to ask. Song Ryu said lightly, "Song Ryu," running away, shining brilliance. "A gentleman is like a jade, precious for his elegance. A gentleman is like a jade, gentle as jade. A gentleman is like a jade, cut and chiseled." Is that Ryu? Qin Sheng had a good impression of this name. But then he said, "I'm not showing off. I just said it subconsciously." Qin Sheng's cautiousness made Song Ryu laugh. "Yes, it's Ryu, but I'm not that sensitive." "Good name." Qin Sheng couldn't help but say. He didn't think it was inappropriate. It was a good name for both men and women. Confucianism emphasized the golden mean and worshiped gentlemen. The two words Ryu matched the original meaning. While Qin Sheng was speaking, Song Ryu was still looking at him up and down calmly. Especially when Qin Sheng was speaking, she kept staring at his eyes, trying to find out something from him. She had recovered from the initial absent-mindedness and surprise. In fact, when she guessed Qin Sheng's name, she already knew why Grandpa had asked them to come so early today. Obviously, the others should have known the reason, but they just hid it from her. Everyone thought that she didn't know the past between the Song and the Qin family, but she had known it a long time ago. Her grandmother, who had passed away many years ago, had once spilled the beans. At that time, she thought it was interesting, but she didn't take it seriously. Moreover, she knew that the man of the Qin family had been missing for many years, but she didn't expect that the Qin family would find him, let alone see him today. Chapter 397. Let's talk about it. The second update is here. Keep up the pace and ask for some monthly votes. The door of the main hall was closed by Secretary He, so the people inside could not see Qin Sheng and Song Ryu outside, so that they would not be under too much pressure. They could take their time to get to know each other and catch up with each other. Old Master Song was not worried about the awkward silence between the two children. First of all, he was very confident in his granddaughter's ability to get along with others. Most importantly, in any case, they used to be playmates. More or less, they would have something to talk about. Moreover, Qin Sheng did not look that dull. Ran, are you satisfied with our you? Don't bully our you in the future, teased Old Man Song. When the men heard this, their hearts couldn't help thumping. Old Man Song was determined to marry you into the Qin family. He didn't even ask for their opinions, let alone whether you was willing or not. Qin Ran was also stunned. She did not expect Old Master Song to be so direct. She did not know how to answer. After all, she dare not say yes casually. After all, Qin Sheng's girlfriend was Lin Su, although she was satisfied with Song Ruyu. Grandpa Song, I think it depends on their attitude towards each other. We can't force them, Qin Ran said in a euphemistic way. Old Master Song chuckled and said, your grandfather and I agreed on this. It's also a way for our families to get closer and become friends. Originally, we wanted to matchmake you and Hushing, who knew that you two were quarrelsome lovers. Now, it's up to Qin Sheng and Ruyu. Although I've only seen Qin Sheng after more than 20 years, I'm quite satisfied with this kid. I think I'm quite good at judging people. After all, he was taught by your grandfather. As for you, I will communicate with her. Of course, both of them need to agree. I am not that stubborn. Qin Ran was a little hesitant. She smiled and said, Grandpa Song, you are right. I am afraid that Ruyu is too excellent for Qin Sheng. You don't have to worry about that. Although you is arrogant, a girl will eventually marry a man. Old Master Song laughed. He was in charge of everything in the Song family, so these juniors did not dare to disobey him. Moreover, he knew his granddaughter well, so he believed that it would be a sure thing. Qin Ran did not dare to say anything more, for fear that Old Master Song would be displeased or that the other members of the Song family would be angry. The men of the Song family all sighed in their hearts. If the old man really wanted to force her, Ruyu, who had no desires, might directly agree. After all, Ruyu had always been obedient to the old man, not to mention that she had no one she liked so far. Song Hushing was even more upset. But what could he do in such a family? He once asked Ruyu her opinion on marriage in private. Ruyu's answer shocked him. Sometimes he couldn't help but sigh. It wasn't good for a woman to be too outstanding. In the yard outside, Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu did not know what had happened inside. Song Ruyu had guessed it, but Qin Sheng was still kept in the dark. However, this was not a bad thing. At least Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu would not be too hostile to each other. Otherwise, the Song family would be unhappy. So, you've been in Xi'an all these years. I've been there a few times. I like the Balen Museum the most and often recommend it to my friends. Unfortunately, most people only like that kind of bustling place, not this kind of place with real cultural heritage, Song Ruyu said in surprise after learning that Qin Sheng had been living in Xi'an. However, she was somewhat curious about why the Qin family hadn't found him after so many years. It did not occur to Qin Sheng that the woman in front of him actually liked the Balen Museum, which made him have a good impression on her. At least, such a woman had a lot of inner qualities. However, it made sense when he thought about it. How could a woman with such temperament not have inner qualities? How could she be like those vulgar rouge and powder outside? Moreover, her name was Song Ruyu. The 4 books and 5 classics carved on stone in the Balen Museum were very impressive. Qin Sheng chuckled and said, I didn't expect you to like the Balen Museum. I also like that place the most. When I was young, my grandfather would throw me there during winter and summer vacations to practice calligraphy and copy famous calligraphy. Really? Qin Sheng's answer also surprised Song Ruyu. She then said, Then your calligraphy must be very good, right? Qin Sheng said modestly, I'm still not as good as my grandfather. But my sister said that I was bragging, and she never believed me. Song Ruyu smiled faintly and said, I believe you, because I can smell the faint smell of brush and ink on you. However, after saying that, Song Ruyu felt that what she said was a little strange. She lowered her head in embarrassment and hurriedly changed the topic. I like the preface to the Sanzang Holy Sect of the Tang Dynasty, which is the collection of Wang Shiji's books by monk Huairan in the Balen Museum the most. Oh, I like Yin Jinxing's Yin family temple stele, which is his masterpiece after his calligraphy reached the advanced level. Compared with the earlier stele of Duobao Pagoda, it is more amazing. Qin Sheng said with interest, Everyone knows Wang Shiji's preface to the collection of Lantern collections, but they don't know Yin Jinxing's second semi-cursive manuscripts of Nephew Ji. They're known as the double wall of semi-cursive. His competing for a seat, Nephew G and Uncle G, are collectively known as the three manuscripts of Yan's calligraphy. Song Ryu knew all this. She had a deep understanding of classical Chinese culture, and her calligraphy level was not low. However, when she heard Qin Sheng talking about this, she still listened quietly. At the same time, she appreciated Qin Sheng very much. Not everyone knew these things. It seems that you like Yin Jinqing, Song Ryu said thoughtfully. Qin Sheng did not deny it. He smiled and said, "Yes, I like him very much. My semi-cursive is inclined to him." Song Ryu hesitated for a moment and said, "If you have time, can you copy Nephew G's manuscripts for me? I might be a little abrupt. Please don't mind me. I just want to like him." Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Haha, it's okay. I'll try to give it to you as soon as possible. But I'm afraid that I can't copy it well and make you laugh at me." Song Ryu smiled and said, "I believe in your ability." At this time, a young man's harsh voice rang out. "Who is this rich playboy who is hitting on my little aunt? I advise you to give up. My aunt won't like you." Qin Sheng subconsciously looked at the source of the voice, which was also the direction of the door. He saw a middle-aged couple walking over slowly with a child who was less than 20 years old. The young child looked very arrogant and was dressed in fashionable clothes. His tone was full of disdain. "Song Shigui, don't be rude. Have some manners, okay?" Song Ryu scolded him rudely. Then she said to the middle-aged couple behind, "Brother, sister-in-law, you're here. Is the old master inside?" The middle-aged couple asked. At the same time, they quietly looked at Qin Sheng. "Who is this child? He could talk and laugh with Ryu." Song Ryu replied in a low voice, "He's inside." The middle-aged man in a down jacket walked up to Qin Sheng and said, "I'm sorry. This child is too impolite." Qin Sheng nodded at the middle-aged man with a smile and did not say anything more. Song Ryu could not continue to chat with Qin Sheng at this time. She took her brother, sister-in-law, and her little nephew to the main hall. Qin Sheng walked at the back. The boy named Song Shigui threatened in a low voice, "I advise you not to have any ideas about my little aunt. Give up as soon as possible. If you dare to harass her, I'll definitely teach you a lesson." Qin Sheng would not spoil this kind of lawless kid. He snorted and said, "Do you have a crush on your aunt?" When the boy heard Qin Sheng's words, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and threw a punch at Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng grabbed his wrist without hesitation. He secretly exerted force and said, "You want to beat me up with your mediocre skills? I'm afraid that even 10 of you won't be a match for me. If we weren't here, I would have sent you to the hospital." Qin Sheng's strength was not small. The boy grimaced in pain and almost screamed. At this time, Song Ryu just opened the door of the main hall. Qin Sheng released him at the right time and kept a distance from the boy. The boy did not dare to say anything. He did not dare to act recklessly because he knew his great-grandfather's temper. He could not guarantee that he would be beaten, so he could only swallow the loss. Song Ryu opened the door and said, "Grandpa, brother and sister-in-law are here." Qin Ran, who was chatting inside, saw that there were guests in the Song family. She smiled and stood up. "Grandpa Song, we won't bother you anymore. We'll go back first. We'll come to see you another day." Old Master Song did not ask them to stay. He knew that the Qin family had other arrangements. He said directly, "Okay, Ran, I won't keep you. Let Xiao He see you out on my behalf." Qin Ran walked to Qin Sheng and said goodbye to the other members of the Song family. Then they left. Secretary He walked them out. When Qin Sheng turned around, Song Ryu gave him a faint smile. Song Husheng saw this detail and could only sigh in his heart. After Qin Ran went out and got in the car, she asked casually, "How do you feel about Song Ryu?" Qin Sheng did not know the deeper meaning of his sister's words. He was a little confused, but he still replied, "Well, how should I say it? I feel strange. Her temperament is very special. If I had to describe her, I would say that she is as gentle as jade." Qin Ran chuckled and said, "Ha, you don't know how many men in Sijio City want to marry Song Ryu and how many people Grandpa Song has rejected. Those who can talk to Grandpa Song are not ordinary people. Song Ryu is even more arrogant. She has never fallen in love with anyone. But I also think that no man is worthy of her. When you get to know her better, you will know that she is not simple. Qin Sheng did not answer. He could not say that he did not want to marry her and that it had nothing to do with him. He was afraid that he did not know when they would meet again. If he really said that, and Qin Ran replied that he was engaged to her before she was born, Qin Sheng would be so shocked that his jaw would drop. After Qin Ran and Qin Sheng returned to the Sihuan of the Qin family, Qin Chang'an did not ask how things were in the Song family. He knew that Qin Ran would definitely report to him later. Then he arranged for Qin Ran to take Qin Sheng to the next house. At this moment, in the Song family, old Master Song had returned to the study from the main hall. The 3 men of the Song family were called in. Song Ryu was accompanying her brother and sister-in-law in the main hall, but her mind was in the study. She was smart enough to guess why Grandpa called her uncle, father, and brother to the study. Chapter 398. Things are going to change. Qin Sheng and Song Ryu were about the same age. Coincidentally, the daughters-in-law of the Song and the Qin family were both pregnant at that time, so the 2 old men made the engagement half-jokingly. It was an autumn afternoon, and the 2 old men took the time to visit Fragrant Mountain together. After all, the red leaves of Fragrant Mountain were an indispensable scenery in Siju City in autumn. It was famous both at home and abroad, and it was also one of the 4 famous places to enjoy maple trees. At that time, Siju City was not as big as it was now. Standing on the top of Fragrant Mountain, the Forbidden City could be seen clearly, unlike now, when it was completely blocked by the haze. Old Master Song took the initiative to talk about this topic. He smiled and asked, "Old Qin, your wife is going to give birth soon. Do you think it's a girl or a boy?" Old Master Qin shook his head and smiled. "The Qin family is still going on, so I don't need to count. Maybe it's a girl in your family." Old Master Song was not convinced. "Well, I don't believe it. Let's make a bet. I think it's a girl in your family and a boy in mine. Let's make a bet. I've never lost a bet." Old Master Qin said confidently. "But what's the bet? I want to know if it's worth it." Old Master Song smiled. "It's up to you. Then let's bet. If my family has a daughter and your family has a son, then by the same logic, if my family has a son and your family has a daughter, then our 2 families will become sworn brothers. If it's a boy or a girl, we'll pretend nothing happened. What do you think?" Old Master Qin smiled faintly. Old Master Song laughed. "That's a deal." As a result, this seemingly joking bet was made. Even though the winner was decided later, no one took it seriously and no one mentioned it again. Later, something happened to the Qin family. Old Master Qin took Qin Sheng away from the center of this whirlpool. It had been more than 20 years since then. Old Master Qin didn't take it seriously, and Old Master Song didn't take it seriously either. After all, it was just a joke. However, the Song family owed the Qin family a favor, and the Qin family had been in such a big trouble, so Old Master Song kept it in his heart. Old Master Song had talked about this with Qin Chang'an several times. Qin Chang'an did not know about this at all. Of course, he did not dare to take the bet. After all, Qin Sheng had been missing for so many years, and his whereabouts were still unknown. If he agreed to the bet with Old Master Song, wouldn't he be delaying the Song family's miss? However, Old Master Song was insistent. In the end, if his granddaughter found someone she liked and he was satisfied, the matter would be left unsettled. If she didn't have a boyfriend or he was not satisfied with him, he would be to Qin's. The family's 2 girls and 3. Qin Sheng to the Song, 1, and Qin Qin's long ago to be the Qin, 2, to the Qin family. The Song family's daughter was excellent, but she was too proud to find a boyfriend. When Qin Chang'an found Qin Sheng, he had no choice but to tell Old Master Song the truth. When Old Master Song heard the news, he was overjoyed. Qin Chang'an was even more embarrassed. He could only bite the bullet and go on. Qin Chang'an had no choice but to go on. So, today's blind date came into being. Old Master Song stared at his son and grandson, waiting for their answer. Song Husheng wasn't qualified to come in. After all, Song Ryu's brother was in the living room, but Old Master didn't let him in. However, the Song family had high hopes for Song Husheng, So old master made an exception. After Song Hushing found out about this matter, he already had a strong opinion about it. After seeing Qin Sheng today, he felt that if he let his sister marry Qin Sheng, it would be like a fresh cabbage being spoiled by a pig. How could Qin Sheng be worthy of his sister? Grandpa, I don't think Qin Sheng is worthy of you, Song Hushing said directly, even though he knew what his grandpa was thinking. As expected, after hearing this, Master Song's expression immediately changed. He snorted and said, "You seem to be generous, but you're actually stingy. Do you think I'm bossy? Then why didn't you ask your sister's opinion before directly rejecting that kid from the Qin family?" Grandpa, do you need to ask? My sister didn't like Qin Sheng even though he was much better than Qin Sheng? Song Hashan retorted disapprovingly. Old Master Song stared at him and said, "Are you subconsciously against the Qin family because you didn't win Ran Rant's heart?" Grandpa, it has nothing to do with me. I'm not that stingy. Song Hashan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Old Master Song said angrily, "Others don't know your shortcomings, but I do. When it comes to your core interests, you're more stingy than anyone else. You can shut up. You two talk. Fu Shun, you're Yu Er's father. You talk first." The man named Fu Shun was Song Ruyu's father. He had been doing research at the Academy of Social Sciences, so Song Ryu was more or less influenced by him. Song Fu Shun looked very approachable and didn't have a strong aura. He didn't dare to talk too much in front of old Master Song. He smiled bitterly and said, "Dad, I think it depends on Yuer's opinion. If she thinks it's good, we can talk about it. If she doesn't like it, we can't force her. Okay, I'll ask you for her opinion later. But don't tell her about this. If I find out, you know the consequences," old Master Song said firmly. Old Master Song's family rules were very strict, so no one dared to tell Song Ryu secretly. They didn't know that Song Ryu had already known about it. Song Hushing sighed helplessly. "Old Master Song, what's the point of asking for our opinions? It seems that you've long regarded Qin Sheng as your only granddaughter's son-in-law." Song Hushing's father said, "Dad, in fact, it's not necessarily a bad thing for Ryu to marry into the Qin family. She's a girl with ideas. If she wants to do something, the Qin family can provide her with the most direct resources, unlike us. Regardless of whether it's good or bad for her, the future generations of the Song family will have more choices." Old Master Song said thoughtfully, "Okay, you're telling the truth. But I have to remind you that if you think that the Qin family is not good enough for the Song family, you're very wrong. You don't know Qin Chang'an's background at all. I guess many people have forgotten about Qin Chang'an's brother in Mount Wutai." The other members of the Song family didn't know what Old Master Song meant. They knew that Old Master Qin's eldest son had become a Buddhist for so many years. What power could he have? Of course, Qin Sheng didn't know that the Song family was discussing the marriage between him and Song Ryu. If he had known, he would definitely have gotten even with Qin Chang'an. At this time, Qin Sheng had already finished paying New Year's greetings to the second family under the guidance of his sister Qin Ran. This old man was not simple. He had helped Qin Chang'an a lot over these years. When Qin Sheng saw the old man, he seemed to have some memories of him, but he didn't recognize him at that time. When he came out, he remembered who he was and was shocked again. Qin Ran brought Qin Sheng to pay New Year's greetings. In fact, Qin Chang'an had already informed them. Otherwise, how could juniors like them be qualified to disturb the old man? The old man wanted Qin Sheng and Qin Ran to stay for dinner, but Qin Ran politely refused. After all, there were other guests in the old man's house. These old men, who used to be in high positions, were actually no different from ordinary old people if one didn't observe them carefully. When they returned to the Qin family's Sihiyuan, the Qin family was still preparing lunch. At this time, there were already guests in the living room. A man and a woman, who were about 40 years old, were dressed in bright and beautiful clothes and looked very elegant. They sat on Qin Chang'an's left and right sides, chatting happily with each other. Seeing Qin Ran and Qin Sheng coming in, Qin Chang'an said casually, "You're back." Qin Ran obviously knew them. She smiled and greeted them. "Uncle Hao, Annie Chong, why are you here so early this year?" The middle-aged woman, who was called Annie Chong by Qin Ran, was old but still charming. Her eyes were full of charm. She was wearing famous brands from head to toe. Since she could sit beside Qin Chang'an, of course, she was not an ordinary person. The middle-aged woman pursed her lips and smiled. "It's your father who asked us to come here. He said that he has something important to announce. We still don't know. He won't tell us even if we ask him. Actually, it's okay if he doesn't say it. I'm really afraid that he will arrange work for us during the spring festival." "Ha," the man called Uncle Hao said half-jokingly. In fact, at this time, both of them had their attention on Qin Sheng, who was standing beside Qin Ran. Their facial expressions didn't seem to change, but they were looking at Qin Sheng meaningfully. After all, a man who could appear in the Qin family Sihiyuan and stand beside Qin Ran was obviously not an ordinary person. Could it be that he was Qin Ran's boyfriend? If he was really Qin Ran's boyfriend, then they understood what Qin Chang'an was going to announce today. They were afraid that he was going to let this man enter the company. If that was the case, then they had to take it seriously. Qin Sheng just smiled and nodded to the middle-aged man and woman. Of course, Qin Ran knew what was going to happen. At this time, Qin Chang'an stopped hiding and stood up slowly. The middle-aged man and woman also stood up, waiting for the answer. Qin Chang'an looked at Qin Sheng and said firmly, "Let me formally introduce you. This is my son, Qin Sheng." After hearing the news, the middle-aged man and woman's smiles on their faces stopped abruptly. Their brains went blank. Why didn't they know that Qin Chang'an had a son? Chapter 399. Sure enough, Uncle Hao and Annie Chang were not ordinary people. Qin Chang'an had invited them to the Qin family for lunch on the first day of the Spring Festival and announced the news at the same time, which showed how important they were to Qin Chang'an. Most people did not know how big Qin Chang'an's business territory was, let alone Qin Sheng. Even professional organizations might not know it if they did not investigate carefully. The domestic capital market called Qin Chang'an's listed and unlisted companies Chang'an Group. In the early years, Chang'an Group had a wide range of business. It was involved in almost all the profitable industries, especially the real estate industry. It had invested in several companies. The consequence was that its business was too big, the battle line was too long, and the capital chain was too weak. Later, under the guidance of a master, Qin Chang'an built the core business of Chang'an Group around the pan-financial industry, with insurance, banking, securities, and other main financial businesses as his left hand in private equity investment, angel investment, and other investment holding businesses as his right hand. After several years, Chang'an Group was finally built into a capital giant. Therefore, the two people Qin Sheng met today were the two big shots in charge of Chang'an Group. They were also Qin Chang'an's right-hand men. Their resumes and backgrounds were enough to make most people speechless. Every company had internal factions, which was equivalent to the court in Jianghu. It was the same inside Chang'an Group. As long as Qin Chang'an did not express his support, this kind of open and secret fight would continue. In fact, whether it was for Qin Chang'an or for the internal structure of the company, there were advantages and disadvantages. Qin Chang'an only needed to be careful. However, this balance was obviously going to be broken because Qin Sheng had appeared. Uncle Hao's name was Hao Mingyi, a Beijing native. After graduating from Tsinghua University, he went abroad to study and then worked in foreign financial institutions and the world's top 500 companies. Finally, he climbed to the highest position that a Chinese could climb in an international enterprise. Later, he returned to work in a central enterprise and taught part-time at Tsinghua University. In the end, he was poached by Qin Chang'an and became his confidant. Annie Chang's name was Chang Sini, also a Beijing native. Her resume was basically similar to Hao Mingyi's, but her background was more profound. After all, she had worked in the central bank and the big four banks, which made most men feel ashamed. In addition, Qin Chang'an also had several trusted subordinates, all of whom were elites who had been trained both at home and abroad. This was also an important reason why the Chang'an Group could invest abroad so quickly. Unlike most of the private enterprises and central enterprises, Most of them failed after they went abroad. Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini had been working for Qin Chang'an for many years, but they had never heard that Qin Chang'an had a son. They only knew about Qin Ran. Moreover, Qin Ran had been in charge of the angel investment company and had never entered the core management of Qin Chang'an's group. This was also Qin Chang'an's intention. Now that Qin Chang'an suddenly had a son and introduced him to them in such a formal manner, Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini, who could reach their current positions, must be extremely smart people. Smart people were smart people. They would not ask for a snub and waste time to find out the truth. They did not think that Qin Chang'an had randomly found a man to pretend to be his son to tease them. They also did not think about the origin of this son. After all, a man like Qin Chang'an could have 2 or 3 illegitimate children. Moreover, they also knew that Qin Chang'an had 2 or 3 female confidants. They would only think, what does the appearance of this son mean to them? Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini were still in shock, while Qin Sheng looked at them from head to toe. From their conversation, Qin Sheng had already guessed their identities. After all, Hao Mingyi had mentioned the word work. Obviously, these 2 men should be the executives of Qin Chang'an's company. The 2 of them looked like elites who did not look like ordinary people at all. Qin Sheng greeted them calmly. Hello, Uncle Hao, Annie Chong. Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini came to their senses after Qin Sheng greeted them. They had experienced all kinds of situations. Chong Sini responded with a smile. Hello, Qin Sheng. It's our first time meeting. I didn't prepare a gift for you. Boss, you didn't tell us in advance. I'll make it up to you next time. Qin Sheng felt that this woman was not simple. He replied, Auntie Chong, you're welcome. Hao Mingyi said, I was wondering why boss looked different this year. His eyes were full of smiles. It's totally different from the past. Now I finally understand. It turns out that there's a happy occasion. Qin Chang'an had expected their reaction. After all, no one in the company knew that he had a son except for those who knew the past of the Qin family and his childhood friends. Sit down. You don't have to be so polite at home, Qin Chang'an said casually. Then he told Qin Ran, go to the kitchen and see how the lunch is going. Qin Ran squinted and said, Uncle Hao, Annie Chong, please sit down. I'll chat with you later. After saying goodbye, Qin Ran left. She knew a lot about the company, but she was not willing to get involved. Firstly, she was not capable enough. Once she got involved, it would only do harm to the company. Secondly, she was not ambitious. Moreover, the old man was more energetic than anyone else. He did not need her help. After Qin Ran left, Qin Chang'an said, Lao Hao Sini, you must be curious why I suddenly have a son. You may not know about the past of the Qin family. In fact, many people know about it, but no one in the company knows about it. When Qin Sheng was young, he was taken away by my old man. He just came back a while ago. Of course, you don't know about it. That's why I want to introduce him to you today. Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini looked at each other and did not say anything. They just smiled and waited for Qin Chang'an to continue. Of course, I called you here today not only to let you meet Qin Sheng. Most importantly, I want to tell you something. Qin Sheng is studying in the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. I want to let him start training in the company after he finishes his studies in April next year. You know that I'm old and don't have much energy. After all, I have to hand over the company to the next generation. It's time for me to be lazy and enjoy my old age. However, Qin Sheng is still young and lacks experience and ability. He doesn't know the company at all, so I need your help. I have never treated you as my subordinates. I treat you as like-minded friends. I have absolute trust in you. So Qin Sheng will rely on you in the future. Qin Chang'an seemed to be polite. This was completely different from his usual attitude towards the senior executives. Think about it. There are so many elites. If I can't control them, how much internal friction will there be in the company? Sure enough, Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini knew clearly that Qin Sheng was going to enter the company to inherit their boss's business. However, the internal structure of the company was extremely complicated. Moreover, all the companies under the company had local tyrants. In addition, the other shareholders were not simple. If Qin Sheng was not capable enough, once something happened to the big boss, many people would rise up in revolt. Hao Mingyi took the lead and said, Boss, it's our responsibility. You don't have to be so polite. Qin Chang'an smiled meaningfully and then looked at Chong Sini. Chong Sini took the opportunity and said, Boss, as long as Qin Sheng enters the company, we will definitely train him well. It's a piece of cake. He won't let you down in the future. Qin Chang'an did not say anything, but Qin Sheng said in a timely manner, Thank you, Uncle Hao and Annie Chong. I hope that Uncle Hao and Annie Chong can take care of me in the future. If Qin Sheng does something wrong, I hope that you don't mind my identity. Just scold me when you need to. I will start from the bottom and do it step by step until you're satisfied. Although Qin Sheng didn't know about today's arrangement, he already knew that he would enter the company sooner or later, so he didn't resist at all. Qin Sheng's words were very modest. At least, he left a good impression on Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini. In fact, they were most afraid that Qin Sheng was the kind of ignorant and domineering rich playboy who would criticize the company. They were afraid that the senior executives and shareholders would be disgusted when he entered the company. At this time, Qin Ran came back and said with a smile, Dad, Uncle Hao, Aunt Chong, it's time to eat. Okay, let's go. You must be hungry. Let's go to the table and talk while eating. Qin Chang'an smiled and stood up. He was very satisfied with Hao Mingyi, Chong Sini, and Qin Sheng's performance today. Of course, although he said he wanted to be lazy, he definitely wouldn't be lazy. He would watch Qin Sheng get to this position behind the scenes and then completely let go. Otherwise, with such a big mess, not only Qin Sheng would be in trouble, but the whole Qin family would also fall into the abyss of eternal damnation. Of course, Qin Chang'an wouldn't allow such a situation to happen. After all, the Qin family had worked hard for several generations to get to where they were today. He didn't want to be beaten back to the original position. During the meal, Qin Chang'an, Hao Mingyi, and Chong Sini casually talked about work and life. Qin Ran occasionally interrupted to lighten the atmosphere. Qin Sheng just listened quietly. However, during the meal, Qin Chang'an indirectly told Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini not to let others know Qin Sheng's identity. Otherwise, it would be hard for Qin Sheng to exercise. Of course, the two understood and knew what to do. After lunch, Hao Mingyi and Chong Sini left. Qin Sheng and Qin Ran didn't go out for the whole afternoon. There were also several groups of guests in the Qin family, but they were all Qin Chang'an's friends or juniors. Qin Chang'an didn't see any guests, so he introduced Qin Sheng's identity. Everyone's reaction was similar. In the evening, there were finally no more guests. Qin Chang'an also went out and asked some friends who had returned to Beijing to have a small gathering. Qin Sheng was a little tired. To be honest, he didn't like to deal with things like this. But he had no choice now. It was something he had to face. Qin Ran laughed and said, Are you a little tired? Not bad. Qin Sheng, who was lying on the sofa and watching TV, said casually. Qin Ran pulled Qin Sheng up from the sofa and said, Let's go. Don't be cooped up at home. Sister will take you out to relax. Where? Qin Sheng frowned and asked. Qin Ran deliberately kept him guessing. You'll know when we get there. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.